Reconvene this regular meeting of the Board of Lane County Commissioners. Today's Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. Welcome to everyone here in Harris Hall and to anyone watching online. If I could ask folks in the audience the mics are very sensitive, so they will pick up sound, and we have a lot of folks here. So if I could ask everyone's support and respect and appreciation for that, that would be terrific. Thank you. We have first up an item that I think is what most of the folks here are for, and I'm just going to pause to ask Tanya how many people are also signed up to give testimony online, because we may need to adjust the 3 minutes down to 2 just to be able to get through our business this afternoon. Tanya, how many folks are signed up to give testimony online, please?
Hi, let me just ask, because we have several people online. If you are wanting to give testimony, can you please raise your virtual hand so that I can get an idea of how many people would like to testify today? See hands being raised. There is one person calling in on a cell phone with 0403. If you could unmute and let me know if you would like to give public comment today. Okay, it looks like we have 5 people signed up online.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, just looking at our time. We have about a 30-minute staff presentation, and there will undoubtedly be some board comment and questions. Do you have a recommendation from staff about 2 versus 3 minutes for public comment for time's management's sake?
3 people signed up here, I think 2.
2, yeah. So I think we will, Cameron, if you could bring the sign-up sheets, thank you. And we'll close the sign-up sheets because we are past the 1:30. And just while we're waiting for that, and in a moment I will read out how we will run this agenda item, but I also just want to welcome folks. I'm thinking for a lot of you, this may be your first time here, and so welcome. We're glad you're here. We do, as I said earlier, ask that folks keep noise and side conversations down because the mics are sensitive and we don't want to pick up extraneous noise for the broadcast. Also, we don't allow signs or active or audible show of either support or lack of support for any given speaker. We want everybody to please have their time at the mic in front of the commissioners and be treated equitably and fairly and let everyone be heard without a lot of or any comment or audience response. So thank you in advance for that. That just keeps our proceedings fair and keeps us all focused on the content of what everyone is saying. So we appreciate that. So I will now open a public hearing on Planning Action File number 509-PA24-05452/509-PA24-05454. I'm Lori Trieger, Chair of the Lane County Board of County Commissioners. Today's date is October 15th, 2024, and it is 1:38 p.m. This is a quasi-judicial hearing on a property owner-initiated Type 4 application to 1, add a new quarry site to the Lane County inventory of significant mineral and aggregate sites, and to authorize mining and processing pursuant to Oregon Administrative Rules, or OAR 660-023-0180. 2, to amend the Rural Comprehensive Plan to redesignate land from forest to natural resource mineral, or F to NR:M, and rezone that land from non-impacted forest land, F1 zone, and impacted forest land, F2 zone, to quarry and mine operations, QM zone. And 3, it is an application to request a site review for the review of the proposed mining operations pursuant to Lane Code 16.257, parenthesis 4A through J. Staff will be presenting a staff report, but I do want to make a few statements to clarify the status of this application. This is a new application, and consideration of this application will be limited to the record created in this proceeding. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter and recommended denial of the application. Staff followed that recommendation in their staff report. Because an ordinance is not required for a recommended denial, staff did not provide an ordinance for board review today. If the board, after deliberations, chooses to approve the application, staff will be required to prepare an ordinance, which will then come before the board at a continued hearing date. If the board chooses to deny the application, then the board may adopt an order with findings supporting the denial. I'll now read required statements and procedures of today's hearing. For quasi-judicial hearings, state law and county code require that I notify the applicant and participants of the procedures we'll follow and of specific statutory notices. The order of the proceedings will begin with a staff report and presentation by land management staff, Taylor Carsley. We'll then hear from the applicant, followed by testimony from other interested individuals. Mr. Carsley will then provide additional information in response to the testimony. Applicant will have an opportunity to rebut any testimony provided. All individuals who provide testimony must state their name and address for the record. After each excuse me, just one moment. So applicant will have the 15. Yes, okay. So applicant's time will be 15 minutes for their presentation and a 2-minute time limit for other testimony. After each presentation or delivery of testimony, commissioners will have an opportunity to ask the applicant or anyone providing testimony questions before the commissioners then move to close the evidentiary record. Before closing the record, commissioners should feel that they have all they need to deliberate toward a decision. Deliberations are a time for the commissioners to discuss amongst themselves the evidence and testimony heard and determine if the applicable approval criteria have been satisfied. When deliberations have concluded, or as part of the deliberations, commissioners may make a motion. Staff have provided suggested motion options for the board's use. The applicant bears the burden of showing that the proposal satisfies plan amendment, rezoning, and site review criteria cited in the agenda cover memo and attachments. Mr. Carsley, I'll now ask that you please read the list of the applicable substantive criteria as listed in the ACM.
Thank you, Chair. The applicable substantive criteria includes Oregon Administrative Rule 660.023.0180, Lane Code 16257, Sub 4, Lane Code 16400, Lane Code 16252, and Lane Code 12100.050.
Thank you. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria just listed or other criteria which a person believes to apply to the decision. ORS 197.7975 provides that failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. ORS 197.7963 provides that failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the decision maker to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to conclusion of the public hearing and before the board closes the record, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, argument, or testimony regarding the proposal. The board's decision will be the final local decision appealable to the Land Use Board of Appeals. And before I do commissioner disclosures, I'm just going to ask Cameron, I don't see numbering on these, so I want to make sure I take, do you know which, by looking at them, would you know the order, or did you have all three out at once? Okay, so I'll just wing that. Thank you. At this time, commissioners must disclose any pre-hearing ex parte contact. If any commissioner has received or had ex parte contact, then please, for the record, I'll ask you to, 1, disclose the substance, circumstance, and parties to such communication, and 2, state whether you can render a fair and impartial decision. So I will go one at a time and ask commissioners to make any ex parte communication disclosures, beginning with Commissioner Senega.
I have none.
Commissioner Buck.
I will declare as the commissioner for the district in which this application is for. I have received emails from constituents, and I will just say the substance is generally their concerns with the application and consequences to their area, but I do not believe that will make me impartial in any way.
Vice Chair.
I've received a handful of emails, probably about 20 emails of people that are in non-support of this issue as well, information only. I have not received any emails from the applicant or the applicant's attorneys, and so I believe I've got an impartial and not a bias in this case.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. I've received emails, none addressed solely to me, from a number of people regarding this issue. I will state also that in 2003, when I was selected to be the executive director of Food for Lane County, Ed King was on the board that hired me.
And I also have received emails mostly to our general group address, a few individual or with just not the full distribution list, but my practice is always to respond to that person with Taylor's contact information and let them know I can't have communication on the matter and to refer it to the staff who can answer their questions. And that is the substance of any communication outside of these proceedings that I've had on the matter. I will now ask commissioners to disclose any personal knowledge, bias, prejudgment, or personal interest, actual conflicts of interest, or potential conflict of interest. A public official is met with an actual conflict of interest when the public official participates in action that would affect the financial interest of the official's relative, or a business with which the official or a relative of the official is associated. A public official is met with a potential conflict of interest when the public official participates in an action that could affect the financial interest of the official, a relative of that official, or a business with which the official or the relative of that official is associated. I will now ask each commissioner to disclose any personal knowledge, bias, prejudgment, personal interest, actual conflict of interest, or potential conflict of interest. Commissioner Senega.
I have none.
Commissioner Buck.
I will say that I have received campaign contributions from Ed King well over 6 years ago, but I do not believe that constitutes bias.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. I kind of stated too early regarding my relationship with Ed King. Ed King was on the board of Food for Lane County that hired me. That job paid about $60,000 a year back in 2003. Since then, I've been in contact with Mr. King from time to time. He was a major donor for Food for Lane County throughout the years that I was there. It has no interest in, causes no bias in the decisions that we're rendering today.
Vice Chair.
Ed King has given to my campaign, and as recently as 2023, personal knowledge. I was interested in this first permit and watched the proceedings of the board in 2022. I have not had any contact with Mr. King about this issue since 2022, and so I have no bias or anything else to disclose.
Thank you. And I also received a modest contribution from Mr. King in my first campaign in 2020, not in this most recent election. My connection to him dates back similarly to time at Food for Lane County over 20 years ago, and I've had no conversation with him on this matter or of any matter in recent years. The applicant and those in attendance are allowed at this point to rebut any of the disclosures heard, if any, and to challenge the qualifications of any commissioner based on bias, prejudgment, or conflict of interest. Would anyone like to rebut what they have heard or challenge the qualifications of the commissioners? Seeing no one in Harris Hall, Tanya, would you please? Oh, I'm sorry, didn't see you there. Please come to the podium here where there's a microphone and state the nature of your rebuttal to commissioners' ability to hear this without bias, prejudgment, or conflict of interest.
My name is Sue Stella. I live at 48464 Vine Street in Oak Ridge, and I work as a volunteer for the Highway 58 Herald. I can't remember the date, but Bruce Hadley sent a letter stating that there were 3 commissioners that got $200,000, and I feel that those people should recuse themselves. I haven't seen any rebuttal from them. I've seen several people in a magazine article that are sitting here that had something to do with big game, and I didn't read the whole article because this whole thing is making me really sick and I can't sleep at night. But I would like the $200,000 at some point to be addressed because people should recuse themselves if they get that kind of money. Thank you very much. Oh, and our logo for Oak Ridge is a mountain, not a freaking quarry on top of a mountain.
Thank you.
It's going to be on my
I'm sorry. I know that folks have really strong feelings on this issue, but for us to have these proceedings be fair to everyone, I'm going to ask that you only speak when you're invited to the podium. If there is a time limit, that you please stick to the time limit. And I also just want to recognize again, this is these are really formal proceedings because in these quasi-judicial land use decisions, the board is acting much as you would if you were in a court. And so I would ask you to please conduct yourself as if you were in a court. And folks that, for whatever reason, aren't able to do that, I'll just ask you to step outside to compose yourself for a moment, and then you'll be welcome to come back in. But we really do need to keep things pretty even keel here so that we can hear all the information that we need to hear before us to keep these proceedings fair. So thank you very much. And also just want to encourage folks, I know it can be kind of intimidating if this is your first time here, so we're just here to listen. Thank you. Yes. Is this a rebuttal to Commissioner's ability to hear these proceedings without bias?
Yes, I believe it is, because it's something that,
So this is about whether you want to challenge Commissioner's ability to hear. If it's general testimony and you signed up
Correct.
on the sheet, you'll have your time then.
Yeah, no, that I'll leave for later, but this part
Okay,
is
so
in
please state your
regards-
name for the record and
Yeah, of
state your rebuttal to the ability to hear the proceedings.
Yeah, my name is Sabrina Ratkowski. I am a citizen of Oak Ridge. I am also what you would describe as somewhat of an organizational director of the Save TV Butte Oak Ridge Strong Movement. The information that I was provided is it is in regards to noise and traffic that it came to our attention by a credible source that one of the county commissioners may have had a chance to tour some of the other quarries with one of the applicant's representatives, where they reviewed noise and traffic, how they are impacted in that area. I would love for our community to be awarded the same opportunity if that the commissioners, I invite the commissioners to come out to Oak Ridge if that is in fact an accurate situation that occurred. I'm unsure of the quarries that may have been visited and the terrain with which those areas lie. I can note that we do have somewhat of a unique landscape here in Oak Ridge in context to where the quarry and processing center would sit. I'm unsure of the potential ex parte impositions that meetings like these impose upon the commissioners as the decision makers in these matters like these. However, I would assume that if the commissioners find that it is not a conflicting issue, that to ensure an unbiased decision is made on the matter of this application, that a meeting and a tour could be set up prior to any decisions or considerations are made. That's all I have on that.
Thank you. So for understanding, presenting an open invitation to us to tour the site would not be something we could do. That would be ex parte. That would be us participating in something related to the site outside of formal proceedings. Okay. But I hear you saying that you have a concern that there's a commissioner who has toured other sites to help them make decisions about this site. Is that
correct?
So I'll ask our representative from County Council if you have any guidance for, or if that's just noted in the record.
hearing the objections or responses, and then, I can weigh in, but my general advice would be for any of the commissioners who think that one of those comments had something to do with them, just explain the circumstance and why they can continue to be unbiased.
Thank you. And the comments would still be in the record regardless of any response to the comments. So is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to provide rebuttal to Commissioner's ability to hear? Yes, sir, please.
Hi, my name is Matt Burney. Address is 76296 Industrial Parkway, Oak Ridge. I would like to ask the commissioners if any have received campaign donations or ex parte contacts from the attorney for the applicant. That's my question.
Thank you.
Okay, this is an opportunity to respond to what was declared. So, if anyone wants to respond to that in their responses to everybody, feel free to do that. But it sounded like there were a number of commissioners actually who provided that they had received campaign contributions. And as far as communications with the applicant's attorney, I think that was probably part of what was already disclosed. So use your discretion in how you want to respond to that one.
I did hear that, and also the specific question about campaign contributions from the attorney for the applicant, not just the applicant himself. Is that right, sir? Is that your concern? Yes. So does any commissioner wish to respond to that? Commissioner Senega.
I'll just say that along with the other commissioners, that I have received campaign contributions from Ed King, but that was years ago. I don't believe that would create any bias, nothing from his attorney.
Commissioner Buck?
I'll just state that I have not received campaign donations from the attorney of the applicant.
Commissioner Farr?
I believe I didn't mention that I have received a contribution from Ed King. That's all I have to say.
Vice Chair?
I've received no contributions from the attorney. I do have a question for the person who brought up the $200,000. I'm quite baffled by that. I just have a question about what that is. So I'd like to direct that to my counsel. Not quite sure where that came from. I have no knowledge about that. And as far as touring a mining operation, one of my constituents' businesses is Aggregate Resources in Springfield. Part of my orientation to businesses within my district, I did go to a mining operation of theirs. It was well before any of this information came out, so it cannot be construed in any way in my mind that it was used to make a decision.
And I also have not received any contributions other than the one previously disclosed from 2020. Are there any other rebuttals to Commissioner's ability to hear? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Holly Olson, and I live at 48502 McFarland Road, Oak Ridge. And I would like to know from each of you who have received funds from Ed King, even in the last couple years, how this could make you non-biased. How can you be non-biased when you have had contributions from the applicant? It seems like that would put you in his pocket.
Okay, well, you can sit down if you're done, and they can decide how and whether to respond to that.
So I think I'm going to, as you suggested earlier, wait and see if there are get the totality of any rebuttals. Is there anyone, Tanya, online wishing to present a rebuttal before commissioners respond?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to challenge the ability of the non-biased decision of the commissioners, please raise your virtual hand. Jill, let's look. I've unmuted you. Looks like you're self-muted. I've sent a request to unmute. There you go. Would you like to challenge the commissioners non-biased?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I would.
Then you may begin.
I would like to repeat what Holly Olson just asked.
Okay. Anything else?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like there is a phone number ending in 0403. If you could unmute and let us know verbally if you're wanting to challenge the commissioners. I don't see them unmuting, and I see no other virtual hands raised. So I'll return it back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tanya. So now I'll open it up to the board for anyone who would like to respond to the rebuttals presented on conflict of interest or bias. Commissioner Buck.
Just be as transparent as possible, since we have a lot of people here and people likely watching. I received campaign contributions from Ed King in my first run for office. Likely that would have been in 2018, but none in my second run for office. It's been quite some time.
No one else wanting to provide? I will also disclose, as I said, I met Ed King more than 20 years ago when he was on the board at the food bank and providing surplus food, and I coordinated a program at the time that collected that food. All of our conversations in the intervening time had to do with hunger and anti-hunger work that we had shared in the community. He gave a very modest contribution late in my first campaign, so before I was a commissioner in 2020, and this last cycle did not make any contribution to my campaign. This is all public record, and I have no problem disclosing it. I received contributions from literally hundreds of individuals and organizations, and the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, which guides us in being in public office. They specifically declare that campaign contributions are not considered gifts, so they're not to the personal financial benefit of a candidate. They're funds that go to a campaign for the purposes of campaigning. They're not income, just if that's helpful background for folks to understand. It's all very complex, so I wanted to provide that information as well. Seeing nothing else from the board, it is now the portion of the proceedings where we receive a report from staff on the application. So we have with us Taylor Carsley, and Ann Davies from our Office of County Counsel is here to support. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Carsley, to introduce the documents before us and provide your staff report and presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The documents before you are the entire record up to today, including the applications initially submitted in July 6th of 2023. We have also submitted a supplemental memo, including comments and testimony that were received today and in the last few days. So that should be in the board's hands. And I have received a stack of petitions as well as some additional testimony and evidence that will be placed in the record. So we have the full record before you here today. So if there aren't any questions, I'll begin my staff report. Again, for the record, I'm Taylor Carsley, the Land Management Division staff planner assigned to this matter. With me is Ann Davies from County Counsel, prepared to provide guidance if necessary. I realize I should pull up the PowerPoint.
Tanya, we are still showing a remote participant's name tile on the screen. And, oh, there we go. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. PowerPoint. I see the PowerPoint. We have a lot to cover today on this privately initiated plan amendment and zone change. So thanks for bearing with me in advance. I'll try to stay within 30 minutes. Today we're going to be going over the application request itself, the process that this application has gone through to date, the evaluation of the application, and options and recommendations for the board and how to proceed moving forward. So the application requests 3 different but interrelated approvals necessary to use the site for mineral and aggregate processing. These are the addition of 46 acres out of the site, added to the Rural Comprehensive Plan's Goal 5 Significant Mineral and Aggregate Inventory. They are a designation change, a land use designation change in the Rural Comp Plan from forest to natural resources mineral, and a zoning map change to amend the zoning from F1 and F2 lands to a quarry and mine operations district. And the request also includes a site review permit for mining. Site review is a discretionary special use permit that's required for many different kinds of special uses. So these images are intended to ground the project's geography and land use. The subject property is located on TV Butte, east of the city of Oak Ridge. You can see the city UGB in red on the image to the left. It includes multiple tax lots, and it's accessed by Dunning Road via Fish Hatchery Road, north of Highway 58. The image on the right shows the proposed zone change of F1 and F2 lands to the quarry and mine zone in blue. Note that some of the site is not proposed to be rezoned and will be excluded from the official mining area. 2 more images here. On the left, we see how the aggregate in the quarry will be extracted in 3 phases, starting on the southernmost hashing, phase 1, adjacent to Dunning Road, and moving north and east in a clockwise direction. The processing area and the proposed mine entrance is located to the south and west of the extraction area. And then in the small inset there, the board can see this 40-foot high walls that provide a longitudinal perspective on extraction operations. The image to the right is the proposed reclamation plan showing the resulting topography and drainage after all 3 phases are completed. I wanted to provide a brief summary of where we are currently in the plan amendment process. The application was submitted on July 6th, 2023. It was deemed incomplete in October, but staff agreed to process the application at the end of 2023 at the applicant's request. The application was supplemented with additional materials in March and April of this year, and it went before the Planning Commission in a public hearing on April 16th, 2024, and a continued public hearing on June 18th, 2024. The Planning Commission continued their deliberations on July 18th, 2024, and recommended denial of the application at that time. So moving forward, it's our hope that the board can deliberate based on the record before it and tentatively decide to approve or deny the application, after which staff can return in a continued public hearing with the necessary findings to support whatever decision the board reaches. So the process by which the board may evaluate the application to include the site as a significant mineral and aggregate resource is limited to the Goal 5 administrative rule in bold. So I'm going to refer to this as the Goal 5 rule or the administrative rule. I'll try to be consistent. Other applicable approval criteria include the application's consistency with the Oregon statewide planning goals and the site review permit standards in Lane Code. I'll note again that the Oregon administrative rule is the primary approval criteria here, and it's going to be what we spend the most time on. Other applicable approval criteria include those as read earlier. The board will need to adopt findings regarding the rural comp plan and zoning amendment criteria in Chapter 16 and Chapter 12. So evaluation of the application under the Goal 5 administrative rule proceeds with the following steps. I'll note that this is a simplification of the steps, and the language in the actual administrative rule controls the process. The following part of my presentation will run through each step in turn as it relates to this application, and we'll provide summaries of the applicable approval criteria in bold, followed by the relevant analysis. So step 1 is determining the significance of the mineral and aggregate resource based on its quantity, quality, and location. The Goal 5 rule sets significance thresholds for these, which the application appears to meet. Geologic boring estimates estimate that there are about 17 million tons of rock aggregate, and lab tests indicate that the rock meets the relevant quality tests. The proposed quarry is in the location of historic mining activity near the old Dunning Quarry off Dunning Road. Step 2 is the determination of the impact area for which conflicts need to be identified. The default impact area under the Goal 5 rule is 1,500 feet from the boundaries of the mining area, which is the distance used by the applicant in this application. The impact area may only be expanded where factual information indicates significant potential conflicts beyond this distance. The applicant's 1,500-foot impact area was questioned early in the Planning Commission records by parties alleging that it was not sufficient to encompass conflicts due to the dispersion of silica dust, noise, and conflicts to major big game habitat. So staff will discuss these conflicts in more detail at the point where we run through those conflicts in step 3. So the Planning Commission was left without the benefit of a response in addressing some of the evidence and testimony alleging the inadequacy of the impact area. So the applicant did not speak to this when these issues were raised. The Planning Commission ultimately considered that the 1,500-foot impact area should be increased due to conflicts resulting to dust, noise, other discharges, and conflicts to Goal 5 resources. In any case, I think it would be important for the board to deliberate on this issue first, since the identification of conflicts, that step 3, will rely on the determination of the impact area in which to identify conflicts. So step 3 is identification of conflicts, and there are several slides that follow here. So again, thank you for bearing with me as I walk through the multiple conflicts that must be identified under the Goal 5 rule. The first part of this step is that existing and approved land uses that will be adversely impacted must be identified within the impact area. The rule limits the consideration of such land uses to existing or approved dwellings. And the application found that 16 dwellings exist within the 1,500-foot impact area, and no, future approved uses existed. There are several conflicts, including those to local roads and those to other acknowledged Goal 5 resources within the impact area that do not relate directly to these 16 dwellings, but rather consider how the proposed operations would affect those resources specifically. I'll note that I plan on covering minimization measures in step 4 separately, so I'm going to run through each of the step 3 conflicts identifications before I discuss minimization measures. So the next conflicts to identify are those related to noise, dust, or other discharges. The applicant provided several professional noise studies, an air blast assessment report, blasting plan, an air quality report, and stormwater analysis. And the application identified conflicts to noise or related to noise, dust, diesel emissions, and air blast and vibration related to blasting activities. The application did not identify any other conflicts, such as those related to stormwater or groundwater discharge, and did not identify conflicts due to the presence of or related to the historic municipal dump site at the processing area. The consideration of conflicts to local roads is one that is not limited to that impact area, whether it be 1,500 feet or some other distance. We look at conflicts to local roads occurring within 1 mile of the entrance to the mine site. That local roads does not cover Highway 58, so we cannot consider state highways. The application furnished a transportation impact analysis that studied potential safety conflicts related to Dunning Road, Fish Hatchery Road, and intersections within the 1 mile radius. It also looked at traffic volume and other traffic safety potential conflicts. The transportation impact analysis ultimately identified safety conflicts due to inadequate stopping sight distance on Dunning Road for westbound traffic approaching the quarry driveway. So that would be folks approaching from the east, public traffic, as well as sight distance limitations on Fish Hatchery Road at its intersection with Kokanee Way. And that's south of the intersection of Dunning Road and Fish Hatchery Road. It also identified safety conflicts due to off-tracking on a curve of Dunning Road west of the quarry entrance, where trucks will leave the road surface. So these are two conflicts to be studied with existing airports and conflicts with agricultural practices. Conflicts typically related to public airports are those that are considered related to a mine's water impoundments that sometimes attract birds, which isn't ideal for a mining operation. No public airports are located within the impact area, so no such conflicts were identified here. Similarly, no uses that would likely qualify as accepted farm practices under the statutory definition appear to exist within the vicinity. So again, no conflicts to public airports or existing agricultural practices were identified. So several significant Goal 5 resources that are actually acknowledged in the Rural Comprehensive Plan exist within a 1,500-foot impact area, including significant riparian corridors, major big game habitat, and low-quantity groundwater resources. These are aquifers and areas where groundwater is quantity limited. The application includes a wetland delineation, big game impact assessment, and a cultural resources record review, as well as a groundwater report to identify potential conflicts to Goal 5 resources. The application only identified conflicts to major big game habitat, although it did not concede that these conflicts were significant in nature. Testimony and comments from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife appear to note that displacement of and direct loss of habitat resulting from the mine to big game are significant in nature, and the Planning Commission found this as well. Significant riparian resources exist at Salmon Creek, a Class 1 stream about 1,400 feet north of the mining boundary. According to the application, no storm drainage will be directed to the creek, nor will other development-related impacts affect this riparian area indirectly. As far as wetlands go, several isolated wetlands exist on TV Butte itself, and likely in the surrounding impact area. However, it does not appear that wetlands acknowledged in the Rural Comprehensive Plan as significant will be impacted. So I'll note that a lot of evidence and testimony was submitted regarding the quarry's conflicts to cultural resources. During the Planning Commission proceedings, it was recommended that the applicant address this issue in more detail within this record. However, no response was provided for these conflicts. Staff understand that the Goal 5 rule only requires consideration of historical or archaeological or cultural resources that are provided on an acknowledged list of significant resources. Given the lack of recorded cultural or historical sites included in the Rural Comprehensive Plan within this impact area, it does not appear that this conflict can be considered under the Goal 5 rule, but would rather rely on other state law to preserve resources within the impact area or the mining site. Finally, conflicts to the Willamette Highway Salt Creek Corridor, which are an acknowledged open space and scenic area under the Rural Comprehensive Plan, Goal 5 Policy 3, were not assessed in the application. The applicant considers that this is not a significant resource, which appears to contrast with the language within Policy 3. Because this later Goal 5 resource was not addressed in the previous application, the board may wish to deliberate on this with guidance provided in the ACM, the agenda cover memo. Okay, that was a mouthful. I'm moving on to step 4, minimizing conflicts. And step 4 involves the minimization of identified conflicts within step 3. So if conflicts are significant in step 3, minimization measures would occur through quote unquote reasonable and practicable measures. Under the Goal 5 rule, a conflict is considered minimized if it's either reduced to a level that is no longer significant, or it meets an applicable local, state, or federal standard that acts as a safe harbor. So an example of a safe harbor threshold would be an applicable Department of Environmental Quality DEQ standard for noise levels. That might be one example. The application contends that all identified conflicts are minimized through reasonable and practicable measures, typically proposed as conditions of approval, and or through conformance with applicable established standards, the safe harbors that I mentioned. The Planning Commission found that conflicts due to noise, dust, and stormwater existed, as well as conflicts to major big game habitat and the scenic corridor that I mentioned were not minimized. So because the board must determine that conflicts cannot be minimized, the following items here attempt to organize a discussion around certain specific conflicts in question. So bear with me while I walk through these in turn, and then we'll move on to the EC discussion. So regarding noise and associated air blast from the effects of blasting, staff previously considered that the noise compliance monitoring plan, which was provided as condition 27, was necessarily tied to the noise minimization measures, since it's really the only mechanism to enforce applicable DEQ noise standards. Considering that this monitoring plan was seen as problematic and not effective in reasonably being implemented or ensuring that the applicant maintains compliance with the DEQ rules around noise. A question of whether the applicant's other conditions minimizing noise conflicts was raised. A list of potential issues with this monitoring plan was provided to the Planning Commission staff report and in other testimony. Similar comments were raised in other testimony. Comments from the Department of Land Conservation and Development, however, noted that the noise study prepared by the applicant's consultant, DSA, appeared to be thorough. With that said, the board could find that conditions recommended by DSA effectively minimize conflicts due to noise without improvements to the monitoring plan, although staff recommend considering or deliberating on an improved monitoring compliance plan to ensure that noise levels actually stay under the DEQ thresholds. And that's if the board does decide to approve the application. In the very least, staff would recommend that the monitoring plan be improved by specifying what party has responsibility for verifying the noise levels of trucks and excavators. So conflicts due to the production and fugitive emissions of dust, including hazardous silica dust, are addressed in the application's air quality report by Arctic Engineering and an air quality assessment report by SLR Consulting. The reports provide that best management practices, including using water sprayers and complying with a required DEQ permit, will minimize conflicts. The latter report concludes that air dispersion modeling is not necessary simply because the emissions of these non-attainment particles within Oak Ridge do not exceed what's called the significant emission rates for each respective pollutant. So these significant emission rates may act as the safe harbor significance threshold for conflicts due to ambient air quality, even if the operation does increase overall emissions. Issues with the air quality reporting have been raised, and so in deliberation, the board would make findings or recommend findings about the evidence and testimony relied upon if there is dispute about the applicant's expert reporting. Conflicts due to local roads can be minimized by amended conditions of approval. Staff concur that the applicant's strategy of removing vegetation and earth embankment on Dunning Road near the quarry driveway for westbound traffic will minimize what is currently deficient stopping sight distance. However, the extent of removal necessary should be based off of what's called the 85th percentile speed of Dunning Road. And to calculate stopping sight distance, you need to calculate the 85th percentile speed, which is an accepted methodology, unlike the applicant's drive test that was conducted to determine a 30-mile-per-hour speed on Dunning Road. So staff have provided an amended version of Condition 11, with which, in addition to other conditions of approval, the board can consider conflicts to local roads minimized. Okay. We're almost through this slide. According to the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and other evidence and testimony, the application will conflict with major big game habitat in the form of both displacement of elk from the impact area and the direct loss of habitat for deer and elk within the impact area. The submission of the board's 2021 order into the record, which denied the previous application, was based primarily on its failure to minimize conflicts to major big game habitat. And this shows that the applicant's 2018 big game impact assessment that was provided in this application has not improved upon the same impact assessment report that was previously acknowledged to be insignificant by the board. And so this 2018 impact report does not address issues raised by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Other evidence and testimony provide reasons why the impact area should be considered to be enlarged due to impacts to elk habitat specifically. The applicant has not provided a response to any big game concerns They have not proposed minimization measures beyond those proposed in the inadequate 2018 assessment report, nor have they provided draft EC findings. I'll discuss what an EC is in a moment, to justify allowing mining in spite of significant conflicts to major big game habitat. So it is recommended that the board determine that mining produces significant conflicts to major big game habitat and cannot be minimized. Finally, the application, as I briefly mentioned, does not address scenic resources which appear to exist within the impact area, this Willamette Highway Salt Creek corridor, which is an acknowledged significant Goal 5 resource. The applicant was requested to address this potential conflict. However, the applicant argued that Lane County does not have any acknowledged significant scenic resources, which again this appears to conflict with the language of Rural Comp Plan Goal 5, Open Space and Scenic Areas Policy 3. So again, we're talking about acknowledged scenic areas within the Rural Comprehensive Plan, not the fact that there are no generally scenic areas in eastern Lane County. We can all agree on that. So with Goal 5 conflicts, we are talking about acknowledged resources within the Rural Comprehensive Plan, and it's clear within Policy 3 that the Willamette Highway Salt Creek corridor is a scenic resource. So I'll move on to step 5. So for any significant conflicts that the board determines cannot be minimized, the economic, social, environmental, and energy consequences, EC as an acronym, of either allowing, limiting, or not allowing mining at the site must be determined. So that means an EC analysis and findings must be conducted and made if any significant impacts are determined not capable of being minimized. This slide contains the criteria to be considered when conducting an EC analysis on any given significant conflict. And I'll just note that the board order for the previous application was adopted based on a tentative decision for, in that case, denial, but whether it's approval or denial, prior to the preparation of EC findings. So that's not to say, and I only mention this because, that might be a decision the board has to make if any significant conflicts are determined not to be minimized. It's not to make reference to the previous application for no reason. The board wouldn't be obligated to follow the same process. However, it's recommended by staff as being consistent and probably easiest to do. So if mining is allowed, the post-mining use is provided as forestry. Also, if allowed, I just mentioned the EC analysis, but the board would have to conduct an EC to determine whether to allow, limit, or prevent any new conflicting uses within that impact area. And if approved, neither the staff nor the applicant recommend limiting new conflicting uses, so that there's no desire from the applicant nor staff to limit new uses within an impact area if the project's approved. I'll cover this briefly because we did talk about other applicable approval criteria. A site review permit is required, though, for mining and for other discretionary special use permits. So this is just, it's kind of ancillary, but attached to the plan amendment. These standards are generally applicable to different development proposals, and they largely focus on neighborhood compatibility and site and safety and efficiency. The permit requirement cannot be used to deny mining or to attach additional requirements to an approval, except where clear and objective measures are added to resolve identified conflicts under that Goal 5 rule that we talked about. The site review standards do not appear to directly speak to the Goal 5 rule conflicts that I went through in a lengthy detail. So it's unlikely that the site review could be used to resolve any potential outstanding conflicts, but that could be a matter of deliberation if the need arises. Furthermore, the application generally appears to be consistent with the 19 statewide planning goals as proposed, but that would, be conditioned on the Goal 5 rule process being complied with. So this is my last slide. Thank you for bearing with me. I know that was a mouthful. These recommendations lay out the next steps for the board to consider today and hereafter. These are slightly different than what is included in the agenda cover memo, just in wording. Because the Planning Commission recommended denial, staff followed that recommendation. If the board does decide to tentatively approve the application, staff would return in a continued public hearing with findings in support of an ordinance for the board's consideration. A key point is that the board's basis for decision should be pretty clearly articulated in deliberation and probably in the motion as well. Also note that the applicant has requested that the record be left open to allow for additional written testimony to be submitted. I believe the applicants requested a 30-day open record period, and so if that were to occur, there would be a response period that follows that open record period that the board could set, and then there would be a third period only provided to the applicant for final rebuttal. So that occurs if the record is left open. It's a 3-step process. If the board decides that it is beneficial to leave the record open, it may certainly do so. However, it does not appear to be obligated to hold the record open. The applicant has responded to several specific transportation issues, an air blast and vibration issue, and briefly responded to an open space resource issue. These are all conflicts that I discussed earlier. These occurred on May 17th and May 21st, 2024. So there was quite a bit of opportunity to respond to substantive issues raised during the Planning Commission public hearing. And so the board should do what it feels is best to deliberate on these issues. I will note as well that the applicant did not provide a final rebuttal at the close of the Planning Commission hearing. The Goal 5 rule provides that the county must complete the PAPA process, the post-acknowledgement plan amendment process, this process that we're going through, within 180 days after receipt of a complete application. We can be considered on day 225. So if the board does decide to hold the record open due to applicant requests, we would recommend that it be conditioned on the applicant providing a timeline waiver or extension for the extended record period, plus any time needed to bring this item back to the board for, further deliberation.
I'm sorry, Mr. Carsley, could you say again, day 225 of?
Of 180.
Of 180, so we're already beyond that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that was a lot. I really appreciate the board's patience while I went through that lengthy summary of the application, and that'll conclude my presentation, but we're available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To the board, before we hear applicant's testimony, do you have questions for Mr. Carsley? There will be other opportunities. Okay, seeing none. So now I will invite the applicant or applicant's representative to provide their testimony and evidence. The applicant will have 15 minutes, so we'll need to take the screen share down, please, so we can get a clock up. Thank you. The applicant will have 15 minutes for their testimony and evidence. Please be sure to state your name and mailing address for the record, and that's when your time will begin. I will note we will offer the board opportunities to ask questions of the applicant after their presentation, and then we will take other testimony from folks in the room. And after all of the testimony has been complete, as well as online, after all the testimony is completed, we'll have any additional comments from staff in response to testimony and have opportunities for the commissioners to ask more questions at that time. And then the applicant will have a final rebuttal opportunity before we move to deliberations. So they're great, 15 minutes up. So welcome, good afternoon. Please state your name and address for the record, and your 15 minutes will begin.
Thank you, Chair Trieger. Bill Close, 375 West 4th Avenue, Suite 204 in Eugene, on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to, staff correctly noted that I'm going to ask for the record to be left open. If the record is left open, I can dispense with my, whatever time I would be allowed for rebuttal today, because we can do in writing what we would do in a rebuttal today. That might help speed things up. We're all together on that. You can't hear me. Thank you. All right, I'm going to speak up. I can hear because I have hearing aids. So, I don't actually need them, but they help a lot. It seems like only a week ago I was here talking to you all about big game. It's nice to be back. I have four big picture today summary requests for you. As staff noted, I do request that the record be left open. We have a new short memo from staff today. We have a lengthy staff report. We're going to get a lot more evidence in today. There's an awful lot here, awful lot of information here. That's a big fat box. I feel like if we can leave the record open, we can respond in a coherent, concise way to everything that's happened so far. Plus, if we can leave it open for, ideally, I'd like to ask for 30 days, the second and third period at the board's discretion, but we'd like to use that time to address the big game issue in a little bit more detail, if that's possible. Of course, we'll extend the timeline to cover everything that comes as a result of the extension. I really appreciate the staff report. It is a model for a concise and clear staff report from county staff. I've been watching them, reading them for a long time. This one's really very excellent. The applicant believes, in summary, that this application can be approved based on the record as it exists right now, with findings that the relevant impacts inside the relevant impact area are not significant or can be made not significant with appropriate conditions, a starting list of which you already have. Staff talked about how the ESEE works. In summary, the applicant's not excited about the prospect of a decision that includes an ESEE for the reason that friends don't let friends apply for ESEEs. That's a bad acronym. Big picture, an ESEE is somewhat analogous to an environmental impact statement, which we all know because we've all been around since the 1960s. It involves a tremendous amount of gathering of evidence and making findings of fact, and ESEEs are what you do if you can't show that your conflicts will be minimized to the insignificant level with conditions on any standard. You know, you miss one standard, you can't get the impacts down to insignificant. You can always have a significant impact and justify that with an ESEE. ESEEs are like, they're targets for litigation. Every young land use attorney starts by appealing ESEEs, and they're very easy to get sent back, and you wind up in this cycle. So that's not a good option. If the board gets to making a tentative decision to approve this with conditions, we would ask that the board also invite the applicant to draft findings supporting that decision. There are a lot of those draft findings are already in the record. We've been through this before, but they need to be just right. With respect to procedure, my understanding from working with staff is that there's no draft ordinance on the table right now. But if the board decides to tentatively approve this, then there has to be an ordinance drafted, and that happens later. Initially, my understanding from staff was there would be a new public hearing. We'd all go through this again in conjunction with considering the ordinance. And so we went back and forth on that with some energy in the emails. I basically said, we're not going to do 2 public hearings. Everybody goes through the wickets once. One public hearing is enough. And I think staff moved and said, okay, we'll do it that way. Makes total good sense. So as I understand it now, record's going to get built. Record can be left open. Record's resolved. You folks make a tentative decision. And if the tentative decision is to approve, then the mandate, I hope, will be to the applicant to go draft findings. And then those findings would be the subject of the ordinance process. But the ordinance process would not include a new from-scratch public hearing. So most of us have been through this before. The staff have changed in this new application. The board has changed in this new application. The application remains identical to the ones that have been submitted and reviewed and decided by the board in the past. So I said staff have changed. So the new planning staff are looking at exactly the same application that's been before this board, where the old planning staff had said, we support this. The new staff has said, we can't totally support this. We see some issues. The current public works staff has changed. That is, the engineers that are fly specking the road issue, they've changed for this new application. The former county engineer that reviewed this said, this is good to go. The current county engineer that has reviewed it said, we got some problems. And their initial list was about, I don't know the count, more than a handful of substantive issues with impacts related to the railroad and Dunning Road and so on. With some back and forth between our engineer and the county's engineer, that's been reduced to this single issue. We're getting there. It's the site distance issue, which requires you to decide what speed traffic do you assume. You know, the faster the traffic's going, the more site distance you need, and the more vegetation needs to be cut off the hillside. Our engineer said 35 miles an hour, and that's high. The county's engineer said more than 50 miles an hour. I mean, Becky Taylor's here, maybe it's 50 miles an hour. It's huge. The reality is, having driven Dunning Road, I know, and the neighbors know here, you can't drive 50 miles an hour on Dunning Road and stay on the road. So what's the point? Our position is, what's the point of scraping more vegetation that's needed to get a sight distance for a speed nobody's going to drive? So we're down into technical, methodological questions with the county staff. I think we're going to be able to get there. If we can't get there, as planning staff points out, we can do a condition that requires clearing more vegetation to get a sight distance that works for a speed that nobody's going to travel. It's just conditioning. So planning staff has changed. Public Works staff has changed. The board has changed, which means this board may see compliance with standards where the former board did not. I mean, everything's up in the air here. Staff also, current staff, put on their dark green eye shade and took out the sharp pencil and found a Goal 5 resource that they thought was protected, but which had not been analyzed in any of the early applications, and that's referred to as the Salt Creek Corridor. And staff says Salt Creek Corridor is a 3C resource, Goal 5 resource, and this quarry is in that corridor, so it's a potential conflict. And as staff said, we took umbrage with that and we disagreed. We might still disagree, but I can certainly see staff's point. It may be a 3C to be protected Goal 5 resource. I think As staff points out, this can also be worked out with conditioning. I would point out that the language of the plan, which identifies the Salt Creek Corridor as a protected resource, actually spells out how to protect it. The language is from the rural plan: conflicting uses in 3C areas shall be regulated by the management activities of, it goes through the Forest Service and so on, counties' rural resource zones. That is, you look to the rural resource zones, which in this case would be the quarry and mining, and if you comply with that, you've provided sufficient protection to this Goal 5 resource. So my point is that this newly identified Goal 5 resource, which staff has flagged, let's assume it's a Goal 5 resource and it's entitled to protection, the plan itself provides how to protect it, and we can comply with that. I think the key statement at the conclusion of the staff report is on page 25. And there's a paragraph there. I'm going to read the first sentence and the last sentence. The stuff in the middle just provides more detail. The report says their staff suggests that the board could find that evidence in the record suggests one or more of these conflicts are in fact minimized to a less than significant level as provided in the above analysis with conditions of approval. That's great. And then the staff ticks off a number of these conflicts which potentially can be mitigated down to the insignificant level. And then the end of that sentence, staff says, staff does not consider that the record demonstrates significant conflicts to the major big game habitat as a result of mining are not minimized. So they disagree that, based on everything staff's seen, that the big game conflicts have been minimized. That's a pretty positive statement from staff. What staff's really saying is, put aside the big game issue, we think this board has what it needs in this record, that it can find the conflicts have been minimized if the board wants to do that. And that's a good starting point for us. And the last item in the staff's view is the big game issue. And I agree we would like to give that a little more work during the open record period. I think the corollary of what the staff said in that summary paragraph is if the board wants to find, based on this record, that conflicts haven't been minimized, you also have the room to do that. Of course, we're more interested in what the staff has to say about your ability, based on the record and the facts, to find that conflicts have been minimized. And of course, we expect that when we're done with this process, you'll be able to do that, and you'll follow up with a request that we draft supportive findings, which then again would be available for review by staff and everybody else. So that's it. I'm down to 2 minutes. I appreciate you listening. I think you invited questions from the board, Madam Chair, which is unique in my experience, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah. Are there questions for Mr. Close? Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask if you could repeat the portion that you talked about regarding the Salt Creek Corridor.
Sure.
You had mentioned that in I believe the Rural Comprehensive Plan, there was a statement on how you're supposed to minimize those impacts. Can you repeat that again for me?
Sure. The actual Goal 5 open space, and this would be Rural Comprehensive Plan, Goal 5 open space and scenic policy 3 says, the 1983 revision to the 1981 Recreational Resources Working Paper identifies 6 major areas of outstanding scenic value in Lane County. These areas are to be considered 3C resources in the terms of OER 660 blankety blank. Parenthesis, Coastal Strip, McKenzie Valley, Willamette Highway / Salt Creek Corridor, and Coburg Ridge. Comma, 3B resources, which not enough information is known about, Willamette Greenway and 2A resources, ODOT scenic areas. Then it continues, conflicting uses in 3C areas shall be regulated by management activities of the Siuslaw and Willamette National Forests, comma, the Oregon Forest Practices Act, and the county's rural resource and coastal zones. So that indicates to me, and staff may have a different take on this, but that indicates to me that for these resources that are supposed to be protected, the level of protection that's due comes with the county's rural resource zones themselves.
So my question is, if the applicant is the resource, your argument is that the rural comprehensive plan, in part, relies on the same resource. To me, that seems like a circular argument.
It can be seen as tautological. I would think that, I think, I haven't really floated this idea to staff. I'm just working with the bare language of what the policy says. I think what it's saying is you look to the resource zones that apply to the property, and whatever those are, that's enough to protect the resource. And we're talking here not about a particular thing, we're talking about a whole valley, a watershed.
So in the application, I think you're trying to establish what those obligations are. Yet the argument is that in order to minimize, you have to look at those obligations. Do you see what I mean by the circular argument?
I do, and I'm interested to know the staff's take on this. In the staff report, I believe the staff said that the conflicts can be minimized through use of the site review overlay zone. That's another way of looking at it too. The plan, and I think the language of this, under the language of this policy, the plan policy itself specifies the degree of protection that's to be afforded. And I think what this language is saying is that the degree of protection that's to be afforded to land in this entire watershed is whatever the regulation, complying with whatever the regulations are in the rural resource zones.
When the time's appropriate, I'd love to get a response from staff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Mr. Close, just a couple of quick questions. You're requesting keeping the record open for 30 days.
Yes.
And during that 30 days, you'd address some of the issues that have been stated today, and also the issue of the big game impact statement, which, quote, has not been improved upon since the previous report.
That's right. It's the same as it was before. That's right. And everybody else in the room would have, the first 30-day period, everybody has a crack at whatever they want to put in, everybody here included.
My question, similar in follow-up, is why another 30 days to address the concerns about big game? Why not address them in the application?
Well, they were addressed in the application with a consultant's report. The consultant's report says the conflicts have been minimized. It's a very extensive report by people with all the qualifications they need. I believe that if the board wanted to just close the record today, there are sufficient facts in that report to make findings approving the use based on a finding that the conflicts for big game have been minimized. A lot of people disagree with that, including folks at ODFW. And it was an issue in the litigation at LUBA in the previous cases. I I'd like to put some energy, the applicant to put some energy into looking for ways to further mitigate the conflicts with big game. I am confident that we will never get to the point where everybody agrees that the conflicts have been mitigated adequately for the places where they're coming from.
And is that not what an EC can help with? Is that not the purpose of an EC?
No.
Oh.
It's just the opposite.
I'll have staff, because
Well,
that's
I
not
can
my
elaborate.
understanding because it's my understanding that there, particularly, not even regarding big game, but regarding some of the noise concerns, that the mitigation plans presented may be sufficient, but there are concerns about compliance and recourse for non-compliance that weren't adequately addressed. So I think, yeah.
If you're doing an EC, you're starting with the finding that you have not and you cannot minimize conflicts. So the EC process is a way of justifying that it's okay to not meet the standard. It's okay to not be able to minimize the conflict. It's okay as a matter of policy, and here's why. And then you have to go through the recipe for doing the ESE. So if you're in the ESE process, you've already failed to minimize the conflicts. You're doing the ESE to rationalize it being okay.
And then right, so the EC helps to address the conflicts that aren't minimized.
No. It says it's okay to not minimize the conflicts. You justify not minimizing the conflicts through an ESEE.
Okay.
That's what I've learned from staff over 35 years.
I guess for this moment, the only other question I have is it is the applicant's preference that should this board direct staff to bring an ordinance with findings that we not have a public hearing on that ordinance. Is that right?
We're having a public hearing right here. We have to get through the public hearing wicket. Everybody's here. Everybody has a chance to speak. I have it from staff that if we get to a tentative approval and the county floats an ordinance to approve, that we will not have another hearing like this.
Not sure what that means, but if we get to that, I might ask staff for some insight, because that is a new one on me to not have the actual ordinance before us that we are being asked to take action on, have an opportunity for a hearing.
I'm on the same boat. This has all been a big surprise to me. For decades, an application came before the board with an ordinance attached, and you held a hearing at that time. This year, or starting last year, this county has started doing it differently. They hold a standard public hearing like on any land use application without an ordinance, and they make a tentative decision, and if the tentative decision is to deny, staff generates an order saying you're denied. And if the tentative decision is to approve, you go out and draft an ordinance. Mike Reeder had a hearing this morning where
I'm aware, sir.
he got caught up in 2 public hearings. Not happy about it, but that was a little tiny decision. That's a big decision.
Correct. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will have a chance to hear comments back from staff and then ask our questions. I might have some follow-ups. Thank you. So at this time, we will hear other testimony from the public. We will take testimony in favor of the application first, then anyone who signed up saying they want to provide testimony but they're neither in favor nor opposed, and then opposition. And so we'll do that by each category, first in Harris Hall and then online, and then we'll move to the next category and so on. So thank you for bearing with us, shifting venues. So first, I have sign-up sheets, and again, I'm going to apologize in advance if you feel you signed up in a different order than I'm calling you, but we had several sign-in sheets. People were signing up at the same time. And I'm looking at I have Mr. Close signed up in favor, so we'll consider his testimony as the applicant to be his testimony. And no one else signed up in Harris Hall to deliver testimony in favor. So I'll ask Tanya if there's anyone online wishing to provide 2 minutes of public testimony in favor of the application.
Thank you, Chair. So if you're online and would like to give testimony in favor, please raise your virtual hand. Again, there's one person on the telephone. If you could unmute your phone and confirm if you would like to give comment in favor or not in favor or neutral, that would be helpful. Chair, I do not see any hands raised for in favor.
Thank you. So then for neither in favor nor against the application, I have one person signed up, and that is Chad Shelton. Chad, are you here? He left. Okay. Tanya, will you see if there's anyone online wishing to provide neutral testimony?
I do show Chad is actually online now. Chad, can you unmute?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Would you like to be on camera?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, then I'm going to promote you.
Before you do that, I would like to, I feel like I signed the wrong sheet. I am against.
Oh, okay. So we're not there yet. This is neutral,
Okay.
so just hold tight.
Thank you. Then, Tanya, I'm going to mark him as absent on the in-person sheet, and you can put him into your queue when it comes to online comment.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I raise a concern? Has logistics, switching people over between in-person, showing on camera versus not is, it can cause some problems with a Zoom meeting, as we've witnessed in the past. I'm wondering if we could just do voice instead of being, giving the option to being online camera.
Yeah, for the record, there's no problem unless there's any opposition from the board for efficiency's sake. Sure, that's great. Thank you, Tanya, for flagging that. So we will now take comments from parties not in favor of the application, and I have a few sheets here. They're not all full, so I'm going to start with the full one, presuming that was the first one out and filled up quickly. When I call your name, please come to the podium, state your name and a mailing address for the record. When you do, your 2 minutes will begin. The clock is on the wall. And we will start by hearing from Josh Laughlin, who will be followed by, looks like Michael Smith, and anyone whose name I mispronounce, my apologies. You have your opportunity to read it properly into the record. So again, Josh Laughlin, followed by, it looks like Michael Smith, but I could be wrong about that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board of Commissioners. My name's Josh Laughlin, 120 Shelton McMurphy Boulevard, Suite 250, 97401.
Timer, Tanya.
I'm the Executive Director of Cascadia Wildlands, testifying on behalf of our more than 12,000 members and supporters, a large percentage who are based here in Lane County, dozens who reside in Oak Ridge and West Fir, and a handful who live adjacent to the proposed Old Hazeldale mine east of Oak Ridge, immediately adjacent to Oak Ridge on the east side. I cite by reference the comments Cascadia Wildlands and Crag Law Center submitted and the testimony presented to the Lane County Planning Commission at the April and June meetings. We wholeheartedly support the Planning Commission's unanimous recommendation to deny Old Hazeldale's application to rezone and blow up TV Butte to facilitate a gravel mine. Cascadia Wildlands has been tracking this issue for close to 10 years, and one theme stands out pretty clearly to me. The only one championing this application is the out-of-town developer proposing the mine. As we heard with no one in support today, aside from the applicant's attorney. The mayors and councils of West Fir and Oak Ridge have repeatedly opposed it. The Oak Ridge West Fir Area Chamber of Commerce doesn't want it. The business community has been very vocal in opposition to it. Adjacent neighbors, who you're going to hear a lot from today, are terrified about their futures. And the outdoor recreation community, which is a big economic driver up in the area, has voiced its staunch opposition. And numerous experts, as you've probably read in the reports, have identified serious and unminimized impacts the proposal would have on quality of life, safety, and the environment. At the April Planning Commission meeting, testimony was 20 in opposition and 1 in support. At the June meeting, it was 18 in opposition, 1 in support. The lone supporter, again, was the attorney for the applicant who wants to blow up TV Butte. So I think there's something to be said there. The affected public for years and the Planning Commission in July identified a number of conflicts that haven't been minimized, which you heard all about.
Thank you for your public
For these
comment.
reasons, I appreciate you standing up for the community. Thank you.
Next up is Michael Smith, followed by Anna Jane. Thank you.
Hello, this is Michael Smith, 1320 Road H, York, Nebraska. I'm here visiting my daughter in this area, and there is a severe lack of water in that area. I find every day that the well must shut off for a period of time, allowing the water to resupply to that well. And with this coming on, the water would be severely impacted in that area. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Anna Jane, who will be followed by Linda McMahon.
To me and many of us, this is a life and death decision, not only for the humans, but for the eagle and the owl.
Thank you. Could I ask you to please state your name and your mailing address for the record, and and then your time will begin. Thank you.
P.O. Box 1432, Oak Ridge, Oregon. Actually, here's a picture of my home and the mountain behind me, and the silica dust would actually kill me. I already have silicosis, and it's the lungs of our young children and everyone else. That trucks going with silica dust cannot be minimized by water use, that we need our water for to drink, not to satisfy the greed. We're just not expendable to the greed of this man.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Linda McMahon, who will be followed by Tim Coughlin. And as I call the on-deck person, as it were, you're welcome to come and stand near the podium just to keep us moving, just in the interest of time. We want to hear from all of you, but we also want to keep things moving.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda McMahon, P.O. Box 1114, Oak Ridge, Oregon. I've been opposed to the quarry since 2015, when we were notified of it in September. This is not an appropriate plan for Lane County's future. I hope and I urge you to read all of the information that we provided and to listen to our testimony today. All these people, most of them are from Oak Ridge. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We have over 3,000 citizens that have signed our petition that have been submitted. We also note that if the hearing could have been on for example, last time we had it in the evening in Oak Ridge, I think we got a lot more response than just this, but this is an overwhelming response. I strongly urge you to not approve the application and follow the Lane County Planning Commission's unanimous decision to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Tim Laughlin, who will be followed by Kelly Wyant.
Hello, County Commissioners. Thank you for hearing us. My address is 48943 Roberts Ranch Road. So I own 60 acres immediately adjacent to the mining proposal, and mostly surrounded by national forests. And so I have a firsthand view every single day. I've lived there for over 10 years of the recreation that occurs and the traffic with the wildlife. And this mine that's going to be squeezed in between the edge of the town and what a wonderful wildlife area, it would be catastrophic, in my opinion. So these mitigations, I know there's a lot of legalese and with the mitigations, and even their proposed mitigations, they're not even close enough because of the location of this proposed mine. It just does not belong there. And I really appreciate you hearing us, and I thought the staff did a great job the last few years, and the Planning Commission, and I really appreciate all the work that you guys do as public service, so thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Kelly Wynant, who will be followed by Susan Stella Miley. Okay, and that was the substance of what you wanted to raise? Okay, thank you.
Kelly Wynant, 76512 Poplar Street. I work with the mountain biking community in Oak Ridge. We are currently getting a lot of income into our town from the mountain bikers. In the last few weeks, I've brought people in from New Zealand, Germany, Tasmania, Canada, Nova Scotia. All these people recognize Oak Ridge. They come to our community, they spend money on planes, car rentals, bike rentals, hotel rooms. What you're being asked to change, these people are just going to put a scar on the side of our mountain. There's not going to be any money. These truck drivers aren't going to come and stay in our community and enjoy our food and enjoy our hotels. They're going to destroy our roads. They're going to increase your guys' bills. Why are we even thinking about this? We're one of the gems of your community, and you're thinking about ruining. We're one of the top 6 mountain biking places in the entire world. We're highly recognized. Don't screw this up.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Curtis Harville, who will be followed by Sabrina Ratowski then, who will be followed by Chris Brownfield. Are you Chris Brownfield? Okay, yeah, the sign-in sheet was just for folks wanting to testify. Thank you. So Sabrina Ratowski will be followed by Eugene Cathcart.
Hello again. So my name's Sabrina Ratkowski. I live at 76331 Drasper Drive in Oak Ridge. These notes that I'm going to go over are based on reports that I actually have submitted to the county already just this last Sunday, as well as back on April 14th. So photos provided that I've provided recently help reflect how air impurities impact our area by resting in our bowl-shaped valley. We would have a quarry that is roughly a mile away from where those photos were taken versus smoke in the photo that is referenced being from fires that are miles out of town, 10 to 20 based on the fire map screenshot that I also provide. So just showing the variance of the silica dust not making an impact on our community versus fires from miles away making and it just sitting in our community. Please take that into consideration. On top of the fact that another $1 million grant is being provided to the Oak Ridge area in assistance of air quality. This is on top of the $4.9 million airshed grant that was noted in my previous April 14th report. In regards to economic goals and ESEE outlined in Goal 5, our ongoing tourism, as Kelly just pointed out, we have noted that our county is known that it is noted that to our county that our town is known as the mountain biking capital of the Northwest. And an article from the Registered Guard notes how Oak Ridge has a world-class trail system or trail network and is one of 6 gold-level ride centers in the world. Legal responsibility of the landfill. I would like to note that when the property was sold by the city to the applicant, it was for forested and unforested land. The city made the agreement to hold responsibility of the landfill based upon this zoning. I would argue that approving this zoning change to a quarry would ultimately alter the terms of a previous agreement that was made with the city and the applicant.
Thank you.
Since the current Oak Ridge City Administration has expressed their unanimous opposition for the quarry approval, if this city opposition is disregarded by the county and the
We are at time. I'm so sorry.
Okay, can I just finish the sentence really quick?
Thank
Okay. And the quarry approved, I request an updated agreement for Lot 502 be created that moves the responsibility of this landfill and any potential contamination or cleanup to be placed onto the county.
I don't believe, thank you. Thank you for your public comment. And I'm sorry to cut people off, but if I do it for one person, I have to do it for everyone. Thank you so much. Next up is Eugene Cathcart, who will be followed by Sue Cathcart.
Hello, and thank you for your time today. My name is Eugene Cathcart, and I'm a resident of Oak Ridge, P.O. Box 649 up in Oak Ridge, Oregon. I'm here to speak to you today as the president of the Uptown Business and Revitalization Association. We're a small group trying to find opportunities for economic vitality in Oak Ridge. I'm also the head coach for the local mountain bike team, part of the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. And I've worked at the Willamette Mountain Mercantile, which is a little kind of an REI, sort of a cornerstone store in our community. I've been there for 20 years since I moved to Oak Ridge. I moved there to live in a place with excellent air quality and water quality. And during the times that I've lived there, I've been working with many of my community members to find economic opportunities for the community. And as you probably are well aware, we have the industrial park just downhill from this proposed site, where we're always looking for opportunities for great tenants and people to move into our town and help us find a path forward where we can all make some money. So on the one hand, you know, these economic opportunities can look like a good thing for our community, but you wouldn't see so many people here in opposition to this project if it wasn't a seriously wrong way to go. And please come visit our community, see how close this is in proximity to the trails that the kids ride. Come spend an hour there and see the elk herd. We're not making this up. This isn't like big game habitat just to try and like get this out of our backyard. They're there. You can drive up there any day and see these big elk in the community. So, you know, I guess I'm really here to ask you to uphold your own standards of integrity. I'm sure that you all are on this board because you wanted to do something positive and good and right in Lane County and for the communities that you serve. And I think this is an excellent opportunity to do that and leave a lasting legacy that you're going to be proud of. So.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Sue Cathcart, who will be followed by Phil Robbins.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Sue Cathcart, P.O. Box 649, Oak Ridge, Oregon. I'm a resident and also a coach of the youth mountain bike team and concerned about the economic prosperity of our town. And I think that the impact area of 1,500 feet isn't enough to measure the impact to our community. And I think we need to also consider the impact to the Uptown Business District, the Highway Business District, and the schools, and what it means for the kids and for the family. And Oak Ridge is recovering from we're trying to find a new economy. We are recovering from the end of one extractive economy, and we're turning to recreation and visitors for our new economy, and approving or allowing gravel mining in our town is a step in the wrong direction, and it would it'd be detrimental to the economic strides that we've already made, and also to the health, the air quality, water quality, noise, mental health of our community in the first place. So yeah, please consider that in your decision.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Phil Robbins, who will be followed by Pepe Barriger.
Hello, my name is Phil Robbins. I live at 1554 Buck Street, Eugene, Oregon, 97402. About a little bit over a year ago, we moved off of our little farm about 2,000 feet from Parvin Butte. And I'm here to say that 1,500 feet is nowhere near adequate as an area of impact. At about 2,500 feet, we had noise, continuously and nerve-wracking. We had cracks in our foundation. We had short circuits in the walls, in the wiring, because of the motion of the blasting. And that's about 2000. We moved away with a tremendous devaluing of our investment there. And I'm sorry we had to leave, but the noise was driving me crazy. And I have always regretted and will never forget when the Parvin Butte gravel mining was approved by the county commissioners. And I hope that in the case of Oak Ridge, whose residents have been bothered for many years by this threat hanging over them, that you will keep in mind their best interests. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Pepe Barriger, who will be followed by James Clevenger.
Hi, my name is Pepe Barriger, and I live at 115 North Van Buren Street in Eugene. My husband and I frequently visit the Oak Ridge area, and the town's amenities make it easy, comfortable, and fun to visit. We come for the natural beauty of the surrounding area, and we treasure our days spent hiking in the woods and sitting by the rivers, grateful that we have a place nearby to get away from it all. If the quarry is permitted, we will be discouraged from visiting the area by the noise, the air pollution, and the water pollution that it will generate, and by knowing that a beautiful natural area is being destroyed unnecessarily. Please vote to deny the permit, and please deny it once and for all in order to preserve the wonderful recreation area and to support the health, the well-being, and the livelihood of the people of Oak Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is James Clevenger, who will be followed by, looks like Ruth Dillender. Oh, it's Matt Dillender. Great.
Thank you, Chair. James Clevenger, Oak Ridge City Administrator, P.O. Box 1410. I'm here to represent the interests of the citizens and the City Council of Oak Ridge, which, as you know, is unanimously opposed to this proposal. Our sister city of Westford also has a letter of opposition to this. But I wanted to supplement that a bit. Right now, we are known as the mountain bike capital of the Northwest. I'm afraid that if you reverse this unanimous decision by your planning commission, we are soon going to become known as the Superfund site capital of the Northwest. Now, why would I say something like that? It's the old landfill, the dump, the 30 acres that the city sold to Crown Properties, Ed King, in 2011 when the city was going bankrupt and really needed money. Not only did we sell it, but we put in the agreement that the city would be responsible for any environmental degradation forever. Well, I'm here to tell you as an attorney that that contract is pretty unconscionable. And as nicely as I can say this, the city will certainly sue the county because the county also operated the dump. And it's not just any old dump, it was a burning dump. There are people here that will recall going there as children and watching the cool flames come out of whatever the hell they were burning there and then putting into barrels. So what do we know? Well, we know that the edge of the property is 365 feet from our aquifer protection zone that goes into our drinking water. I didn't misspeak, 365 feet. That's a football field. Now, you know, in the staff report it says, well, there's no negative tests on the environmental stuff. Well, yeah, because there haven't been any tests. We can't even agree on the size of the dump. It's too close, it's too dangerous. What they have said, what DEQ has said, that if there are chemicals there, they will likely contain PCBs. Those are those forever chemicals that the federal government now says that if those are in the drinking water, you got to shut down the drinking water, which also means no water for the site. could go on, but I also just wanted to correct the record. Commissioner Lovell, I think you said you had not received any contributions from the attorney, Bill Close. You actually received double the amount of money that Commissioner Senega and Farr received in 2022. So you might want to check Orstar because
Thank you
it's
for your
public
public
record.
comment. Next up is Matt Dillender, who will be followed by Craig Marcus. Is Matt here? No. Craig Marcus? Is Craig Marcus here? Great. And after Craig will be Josh Cohen.
Thank you and good afternoon. Craig Marcus, 47768 Ferry Glen Drive, Oak Ridge. I'm also a member of the board of directors of Southwest Willamette Solutions, and I have 47 years of experience as a scientist working in the field of environmental and molecular toxicology. To be brief, the proposed quarry would significantly harm both environmental and human health in the general Oak Ridge and West Fir area. As you know, Oak Ridge has been in non-attainment for EPA air quality for decades. Adding the additional pollutants that are likely to come from silica dust and from diesel particulates that are going to be emitted by this quarry, which are well-known cardiac and pulmonary toxins, will only add to the human health burden in this already disadvantaged area. The toxic pollutants generated by this quarry would not only harm local human and environmental health, but it will, as you have heard, deter recreational visitors that currently provide much of the current economic activity for the area. It will also deter the ability of Oak Ridge to develop new environmentally friendly industries at the immediately adjacent Oak Ridge Industrial Park. As you also heard, the impact from that unknown waste dump is going to be significant for the environment and for human health. There are unknown legacy contaminants that are present in that dump, and the quarry activities are almost certainly to mobilize these legacy environmental contaminants into air and the water. And then finally, you're adding additional industrial activity to a very sensitive, fire-prone area. And you're going to be adding new ignition sources on a daily basis that are going to increase the wildfire risk for this area. So in summary, this project is likely to have very significant environmental and human health impacts on an already disadvantaged area and is a classic case of environmental injustice for an already underserved population. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Josh Cohen, who will be followed by Tyler. Is that Josh saying you don't want to speak? Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. So Josh Cohen is next and will be followed by Robin Wilson. Is Josh Cohen here? No. Okay. Is Robin Wilson here? Yes. Robin will be followed by Kelly Brewer. Is Kelly here? All right. Thank you. Kelly, if you want to come and wait on the side so that you're ready to queue up as soon as Robin's done, that's welcome, if you're able to
Good afternoon.
stand.
My name is Robin Wilson, and my mailing address is P.O. Box 591, Oak Ridge, Oregon. I moved to Oak Ridge from California, where I lived in a very busy city, and I moved to Oak Ridge because it was so beautiful, so quiet. I love hiking, I love camping, and I live about a mile from where this quarry. I live off of just off of Fish Hatchery Road on East First Street. We live in a bowl in Oak Ridge. We already suffer in the winter from wood smoke, which has been, fortunately, through a lot of efforts of the community, has been mitigated at some point, somewhat in my 14 years here. But now that's been compromised by the wildfire smoke. 2 years ago, after the Cedar Creek fire, we suffered with air quality indexes in the 700 to 900 air quality index. That's worldwide almost the worst air quality. I don't see the dust that's going to be that we're going to be having, from the blasting. At one of the meetings, someone in the community asked, what about the dust once the gravel trucks leave the quarry? And the guy basically just said, out of our control. Also, mitigating the dust is going to require a lot of water. And we've already had a water issue several years ago since I've lived there where we couldn't water outside, but only for 20 minutes every other day. And a big concern of mine is because I like to hike in the area. I hike a lot at Aubrey and is, again, with the wildlife because I walk my dogs up Fish Hatchery Road and I've seen deer and elk crossing the road. Elk have crossed in my neighborhood. And there's a lot of wildlife trails in the area, so it's obvious that they're there. And I would ask that you deny the petition.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Kelly Brewer, who will be followed by Dustin Rimpf. Is Dustin here?
Hi, I'm Kelly Brewer, 48471 Hill Street in Oak Ridge. I am a city councilor, but I'm here as a community member. I just came from our U of O SCYP kickoff meeting where we are partnered with U of O to use students and staff to gain fresh ideas to better our sustainability as a city. For the cost of thousands and thousands of dollars paid by the city, these projects include things like tourism, housing, wastewater treatment, and community services. We as a community have shown up, emailed, and called time and time again to say no. We do not want this. Their lawyer talks about previous staff having different opinions as to what's an acceptable mitigation. Why does that term keep coming up? Acceptable is a relative term. It is not acceptable for these Goal 5 rules to not be met. They don't want a public hearing because we all show up. We all show up and take lots of time to tell them how much we do not want their business in our town. They also don't want an ESEE because they know they will never be able to meet the criteria. Why set aside these conflicts? Why are these violations of Goal 5 okay with their conscience? Even if the applicant's lawyer has acknowledged these facts, grasping at straws won't change the fact that we keep showing up over and over again and we're never going to stop saying no. As far as leaving the record open, why? 200 and some odd days isn't enough for them to just turn in the same or no new information at all. They've shown you that they don't care. Their lawyer is there now scrolling on his phone. He's not listening to any of us speak. He doesn't care about our town or anybody in it. He cares about money. Same thing with Ed King. Over and over again, all these public hearings, we keep coming, we keep calling, we keep emailing. This should be a no-brainer. This should really be a no-brainer. Oak Ridge does not want this quarry. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Dustin Rimpf, followed by Chrissy Hollett. Is Chrissy here? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Dustin Rimpf. I live at 1678 Villard Street, and I'm here on behalf of the non-governmental organization South Willamette Solutions. We submitted a letter approved by our board in April in objection to this project. 2 of our board members have already spoken today. I understand that you have to, as a planning body, a quasi-judicial body, go after OAR and all of that stuff. So I'll try to speak to that language that staff brought up too, but can't promise that entirely. One of the things that I want to bring up, first of all, that Craig brought up, who's on our board, is that, one of our major projects that we've had, and I think somebody else mentioned this, but is an EPA-funded project to reduce air quality impacts in Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge ranks in the 99th and 100th percentile for folks that have respiratory and cancer risks in the nation. And so when you look at that and you look at the fact that I understand that there are very specific things that we're looking at with DEQ standards for emissions and particulates and that kind of thing, but I think it would behoove all of us to go back and look at those beyond those standards and look at the environmental justice concerns that happen in this community. I do also just want to say that, our organization really prides itself at looking at economic development in conjunction with socioeconomics, in conjunction with environmental health, and that we are definitely not against a lot of using natural resources in our area if it can meet that triple bottom line. This quintessentially does not meet that triple bottom line. And one thing that hasn't been brought up, and that's been brought up consistently by some people who do support it, is that this will be a really important source of gravel for Forest Service projects. The other project that SWS works with, which I'm the coordinator for, is the Southern Willamette Forest Collaborative, and we work really frequently with Forest Service projects. There are a ton of existing gravel mines that can be utilized with much less environmental impact than the one that's being proposed today. And so if we're actually looking at economic development and looking at what exists, this is a completely unnecessary proposal. One last thing I want to bring up is that I know that it has to be identified as an identified cultural resource to count under these rules, but throughout history, the Tufti family and other indigenous people have used this butte and this area as an important cultural resource, and I don't believe that those surveys have been accurately entered into the record for what actual impacts are to those risks. So thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Chrissy Hollett, who will be followed by Rebecca Lipton. Is Rebecca still here? Thank you.
Chrissy Hollett. Do I need to say my address?
Please, for the record.
48370 7th Street, Oak Ridge. Chrissy Hollett, I'm a city councilor for the city of Oak Ridge for the last 5 years, I've spent years listening to officials, experts, and digging through research data regarding the proposed Hazeldale Quarry, along with other quarry and mining operations. What I have not found is positive growth or positive development for Oak Ridge. It is abundantly clear that there are real, legitimate consequences to our community and the people that live in Oak Ridge, whether it be through the environmental impact, the health risks it poses, or the likely loss of economic growth and tourism to us. This is detrimental to our growth. There is not a question. This is going against the grain of absolutely everything we work towards every single day in Oak Ridge. Hot topics are voted rarely in unison. Our council has written 2 formal letters, both unanimously opposed 3 years apart. TV Butte is the mountain right smack in the middle of our town. What would this topic look like had Ed King purchased a piece of Skinner's Butte right in the middle of the Eugene community? Would we be standing here for a second round discussing blowing up the mountain? But Oak Ridge is not Eugene. Oak Ridge is a small town. This is our home, our lives. We will live with the consequences. Oak Ridge's future will suffer the consequences. That is a fact. Please tell my community that you have been listening and that they have been heard. And that you're always looking out for the little guys too. Please, please deny Ed King's application.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Rebecca Lipton, who will be followed by Louise Pokorny. Is Louise here? Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment. My name is Rebecca Lipton, 3790 Springfield, Oregon. I most recently have been a home health physical therapist and covered Oak Ridge and Highway 58 territory for much of my 20-year home health career. And I also my first career was as a civil engineer with a focus on water pollution treatment, wells, groundwater, et cetera. I'm also an avid outdoor recreationist and very familiar with the trails, wildlife, and the special natural areas around Oak Ridge. So as a physical therapist, I've seen large elk herds of over 50 individuals while I've been out in the Oak Ridge area, up on Dunning Road and High Prairie area. I've met many families that love the wildlife that exist and visit their properties. I have met families that have actually rescued orphaned elk calves and hand-raised them to independence. The value of this this natural world for recreation and hunting and peace and quiet for Oak Ridge residents is very apparent to me, and I support continuing to protect that by opposing this this mine. As a civil engineer, I'm also extremely concerned about the potential of disturbing barrels of unknown and possibly containing the carcinogen pentachlorophenol that
once leaked and going into groundwater will become a hazard, not only for Oak Ridge, but for all of us. We are downstream from there.
Thank you for your public comment.
Thank you.
It looks like Louis and Kathy Picorni. So are you Louis speaking? Okay. Are you speaking for both of you? There's two names. Okay. So is Kathy signed up separately to give testimony? So you will be next, Kathy. Thank you.
My name is Louis Picorni. Chair, council, staff, thank you for hearing us today. I was born in 1950 in Westford, Oregon, and I've lived in Oak Ridge area most of my life. I've worked out of state at several jobs, working in the shops, like that, machine shops, weld shops. Anyway, I'm here today to say that I'm against this open mining in our area. We live approximately, I don't know, by the survey, it's like 1,200 and some odd feet from the property lines. Okay. And I'm concerned about the domestic drinking water at our house from the blasting. And the story in the 50s was that I would go with my dad in the 51 Chevy up to the garbage dump. It wasn't a sanitary landfill, it was a garbage dump. And I remember seeing everything in there. And, we didn't even know that a battery was hazardous and had lead in it in those days. I don't know where they got rid of the material. They had track machines they would push and then cover it with dirt and topsoil or dirt. And then now today you go there and the blackberries and the trees are grown over and you can't really see. But I know in my mind about where these places are. They want to talk about the elk herd. I talked to them. Is there something wrong with that? I mean, really, they're in our yard, in our front yard. And they come in and I feed them corn stalks and they eat right there at the house. I mean, I could shoot one, put it in the freezer, but it's just my wife and I. We don't do that today. Back in the day, I had to do that. But anyway, they're kind of a lively deal there, same way with the deer and anything other kind of animals. But back when I was younger, I didn't realize about these kind of things. But today, it's just, is my time up? I guess
It is. I know 2 minutes goes fast. Thank you for your public comment. So Kathy Picorni is next, who will be followed by Matt Burney. Is Matt here? Okay.
Hi, I'm Kathy Picorni. Lou and I live on Dunning Road, right in the middle of this whole mess. Our view to the west is the east side of TV Butte. It's right there in our laps. I wasn't going to talk to anybody today, but I get to thinking. I have been working on opposing this rock pit for the last 9 years. And my daughter asked me the other day, well, Mom, are you going to spend your whole life working on this thing? And I don't think I should have to. We went through the whole process. Their application got sent to Luba. Luba turned it down. They came back again through this whole same process again. Luba turned it down again. And here we're back for the third time about a rock pit that doesn't have any business being anywhere close to Oak Ridge. I would think that at some point you folks would say, we've reviewed the same material over and over again. They always come back with the same information, the same applications. I'm wondering, has anyone compared their application now to the application that they did the last time? I bet you can find maybe 10 words that they've changed and then the whole rest of it says the very same thing all over again. And I think you should be able to say, whoa, that's it. We're not addressing this again. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Matt Burney, who will be followed by Megan Metcalf. Is Megan here?
Greetings, Commissioners. Matt Burney, 76296 Industrial Parkway. I'm an adjacent property owner downhill and downstream. There's a seasonal stream that originates on the applicant's property and comes across my property before going into the wildlife ponds in the industrial park. I have a letter from DEQ that says my property's clean. I consider myself an amateur historian of the toxic cleanup at the industrial park, doing my due diligence before moving my business there. I think that's kind of this whole environmental issue is a big can of worms, guys. Nobody really knows, and the applicant keeps kind of sweeping things under the rug here and not bringing it up. We've submitted written testimony, oral testimony, documented our concerns, factual reasons that the application should be rejected. They've failed to respond in any manner. I don't necessarily understand how another 30 days is going to finally elicit a relevant response. So I think that's really important to consider, that the plume from that dump spilling into the well fields of Oak Ridge is a real risk. They didn't get a stormwater permit. They say they're exempt because all stormwater is going to stay on site. Their geologist said it's really good rock. It says that in the notes. It says that the water didn't percolate back in. That's why it's so good rock. So if all the stormwater is on site, where's it going? There's no permit for it to leave the site, so it's going in the ground. And if it's saturating those soils, if there's vibration from crushers and blasting and trucks, and that permeates that dump, and that carries that down into the well fields, onto my property, into the drinking water, Salmon Creek Hatchery, the liability is huge here. The liability is huge, and it could easily outweigh the benefits of having a quarry. The other thing, I'm out of time. Love to bring up the other thing.
Thank you. Thank you for your public comment.
Thank you.
Next is Megan Metcalf, who will be followed by Mick Garvin. Is Mick still here? Thank you.
Hi, thank you for being here today. My name's Megan Metcalf. I live at 48453 3rd Street in Oak Ridge. In my original testimony, I testified to the way that sound travels in our community and how I live about a mile from the quarry and how many different things I can hear from our town that are more than a mile from the quarry. One more struck me this year during our concerts in the park, which, by the way, I work in live music. It's not a loud show. That's maybe 85 dB. Like, you can have a casual conversation at the concert and still be able to like hear each other kind of thing, and like the music's just not very loud. I can sing along at my house because I can hear the lyrics clearly at my house over a mile away. So 1,500 feet for sound, it's just got to be more than that, and I don't think the applicant has demonstrated in any way, shape, or form why it shouldn't be less than 1,500 feet or at the 1,500 feet. I think you know what I'm trying to say there. I also would say that the visual impact goes far beyond 1,500 feet. You can see that butte from the entire town. So how is that not part of the impact zone? It impacts our entire town. I would also like to reiterate that what everybody said about leaving the record open. Why are we doing that? We've spent all this time. You've had plenty of time to respond to the big game issue. You've known since the beginning that the big game issue is what is the hangup here, and yet you have not responded. So why do you need another 30 days? Let's just be done with this, please. There are so many people here who have taken time off from work. We are losing money being here. I know that he's paying somebody to be here, but I can't do that. I am self-employed, and I'm losing money being here. Thank you guys so much for your consideration.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Mick Garvin, who will be followed by Dennis Patterson. Is Dennis here? Thank you.
My name is Mick Garvin. I reside at 47840 West Oak Road in Westford, Oregon. I am a restoration forestry specialist. I am taking time off from my contract to come down here and talk to you all. Been doing this for 9 years. It's kind of wearing on me. I would like to state my support and agreement with the oppositions that have been made as far as loss of elk habitat and calving grounds. Elk can move about, calving grounds cannot. Issues threatening our water quality, our air, our recreation. Part of the haul route is the tail end of the Aubrey Mountain Trail, which is a popular mountain biking trail. Comes down onto Dunning Road. And I want to point out that this is rather unusual. In Oak Ridge, we don't always get along. In fact, recall petitions are considered a sport. I say that if you wanted humanity to get along, you need to have an invasion from Mars. All it took for us to get along and agree on something was Ed King. So thank you, Ed, for that. I would like to close.
Please, thank you.
I would like to close with a statement from the smartest man I know. And I want the commissioners to understand it. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one or the few. And Ed King is not Mr. Spock. He doesn't get a pass. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Dennis Patterson, who will be followed by Dawn Kenyon. Is Dawn still here and wishing to speak? Thank you.
Hi, Dennis Patterson, P.O. Box 190, Oak Ridge, Oregon. Passing remarks, several people have mentioned about the effects of the silica dust on the lungs. When the silica is highly frangible and it generates basically microscopic arrowheads that can lodge in the lower lobes of the lungs, much like asbestos does. And so a truck, if you've been behind a gravel truck, you've had little pellets of gravel come out, like when you're on the freeway and pelt your hood or your windshield. But this is something you can't even see. You won't even know it's there, but you'll be breathing it into your lungs all the same. And it occurs to me that once the dust has settled on the Highway 58, for instance, it would be washed off by the rain into the Willamette River. The Willamette River parallels the 58. In fact, heading west out of town, you cross a bridge that goes right over the Willamette River, the Middle Fork. And much has been made in the last year or so of drawing down the Lookout Point Reservoir to encourage the salmon to reestablish their grounds upstream. And I just wonder if, and I would ask that you find a marine biologist to answer this question, does silica fragments have the same deleterious effect on fish gills that it does on human lungs? Just a question. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Dawn Kenyon, and Dawn will be followed by Andrew Simran. Is Andrew still here? Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Dawn Kenyon, 76113 Fish Hatchery Road, right at the base of TV Butte. I am a city councilor in Oak Ridge, so you've probably already heard from a few people that I'm opposed. I continue to be opposed as a citizen and as someone who lives within the 1,500-foot zone. I have a well on my property. I can't get city water even though I'm in city limits because I'm just on the outside of town, too far away from the city system. So I'm concerned about my ability to have a working well, a well that has water in it and that is safe to drink, particularly with the old dump that the city signed off on to sell to these property owners. I don't want that stuff coming in through my well water. Also very concerning to me was the public comment from the man from Parvin Butte. If you're still here, thank you so much for coming and sharing your experience. I know that this is going to affect way more people than the 16 of us that live within 1,500 feet. I'm also really concerned about the millions of dollars that have been spent granted to the city of Oak Ridge through LARAPA and the Oak Ridge Air Program to clean up our air. It took years and years to attain the 2.5 PM level for our air quality. And we're there. We've only been there for about, 18 months, maybe 2 years at the most. We need to keep it there.
Thank you.
I think that's about all I had. Anyways, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Andrew Simran, who will be followed by James Barriger. Is James still here? Great.
Chair Trieger and other Lane County Commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Andrew Simran. I'm a lifelong Lane County resident, currently a homeowner residing in unincorporated West Lane County, District 1 at 104 Maynard Avenue, Eugene, Oregon 97404, downstream of the proposed site where EWAB will soon be drawing surface water for municipal drinking. I've testified before the Planning Commission and provided written testimony into the record in support of denying the application and for amending the RCP. The application should be urgently denied and findings drafted to support the order while closing the record, given that the application does not meet the requirements as evidenced by the extensive record and application materials. The applicant has had plenty of time to address the multitude of concerns from the community, including big game. And if they're wanting to proceed, they should proceed with the EC report, as there are evidenced by the significant impacts that are in the record. I spent part of the afternoon last Saturday to visit the area around the proposed quarry and drove to the trailhead for the Eugene to Crest Trail, where I often visit to hike or mountain bike. And what do you know, I saw the elk herd there. It was magnificent. It was just before sunset. It was really cool. You could see them right from the parking lot of the trailhead for, federal trailhead. It's pretty incredible that visitors can go right there and reliably see wildlife that's, consistently there and should be protected. The board should move to deny the application and additionally ensure stronger protections of natural and cultural resources if they are considering updating interpretations of land use planning goals, specifically with regard to Goal 5 with big game. It is a significant resource and it does deserve extra protection. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is James Barriger, who will be followed by Alyssa Mayer. Is Alyssa here? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I live in Eugene, 115 North Van Buren Street. I like to go up to Oak Ridge and ride a bicycle on the path sometimes hike. I really like to stay at Salmon Creek. I've lost a couple of my favorite trails in the last couple of years due to forest fires. And I'm really concerned about, I guess, for the people that aren't here, the children who are growing up right now, and the air is so different than anything we grew up with, I believe. The fires have been bad, the smoke's been really bad up there, and we've got kids growing up in that. And at a time like this, it's hard to imagine that we would do anything that would possibly compromise the air and or the water as well. I also have a lot of concerns about the forest fires there. I know 3 years ago, the fires got as close as the Salmon Creek campgrounds, and Oak Ridge isn't far away from that. And I'm just wondering how all these trucks on the road all the time are going to affect the response of firefighters who might be there trying to protect Oak Ridge, and also as well as having a lot of equipment up there, which I assume there'd be a lot of petroleum products and that sort of thing. also, I guess, I'm sure they'd be pretty careful, but the chance that all that machinery could start a fire by itself, a lot of these fires do get started by machinery, and I think it could be a disaster. So I hope that this can be averted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your.
Chair, can you say the name of that last testament? I didn't catch your name, sir. You didn't state your name.
James Berriger.
Thank you.
Next up is Alyssa Meyer, and then she will be followed by Joe Stark. Is Joe still here? And he will be the final person here in Harris Hall, and then we'll move to online testimony.
Excuse me, sorry about that. Thank you guys so much for being here to listen to us. My name is Alyssa Mayer. I live at 77615 High Prairie Road, about 4 miles above Oak Ridge, Oregon. I'm a small business owner and also a parent. I have 2 small boys who are in 1st grade this year, going to Oak Ridge Elementary School, which, if you know Oak Ridge at all, is not too far from the site here. You know, I had these notes, but I think that 1,500-foot impact zone, is that what it's called? I want to add to the testimony you've already heard about how incredibly inappropriate that is. So I live 4 miles outside of town, and after the 4th of July celebration this year, which takes place at Green Waters Park, which you know is not too far from the proposed quarry site, it's actually further away from my place than the quarry site. And from my home, I could hear the fireworks and I could feel the vibrations 4 miles away. So Megan was saying a mile away, she could sing along with the lyrics. 4 miles away, I can feel the vibrations. That elk herd, they come to my place. They hang out in the back. I used to joke that I think they know we're vegetarians, and that's why they like to spend time at our place. But if I'm feeling something and hearing something, animals are so much more sensitive. So listening to the applicant's lawyer talk about how Goal 5, the elk, all these other unmitigated impacts are kind of not a big deal is it's upsetting. If that 1,500-foot zone is bigger, my kids at the elementary school are impacted by the sound, by the trauma of that, by breathing the silica dust. I'm also concerned about the, I'm just trying to understand why the applicant didn't make an effort to provide more information, to offer, they're now asking for these 30 days, like they've had time, they've had years. And racking my brain, why wouldn't they make the effort? It's, the only thing I can come up with is that they're counting on a flaw in our system, which is that they can influence your voice with their contribution funds, with their.
Thank you for your public comment.
Thank you so much for listening, and I just encourage you to deny the application.
Thank you
as it
for your
was
public
denied
comment.
before, and don't let this applicant.
Thank you so much.
Take
I
your
am
voice
going to
away
take
from
the
you.
next speaker, please.
Thank you so much.
Next up is Joe Stack, and he is the last person to speak here in Harris Hall, and then we'll move to Tanya managing the online queue.
Chair Trieger, members of the commission, thank you for providing the opportunity to speak today. For the record, my name is Joe Stack. I am the regional habitat biologist for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife covering the South Willamette watershed. I'm here today to speak on the impacts that proposed application will have on big game. The majority of the project site is within designated Goal 5 major big game habitat. Major big game habitat includes areas identified and mapped by the department as providing essential functions and values for non-migratory deer or elk. Major habitat is categorized habitat category 3 per the department's Fish and Wildlife mitigation policy. The mitigation goal for habitat category 3 is no net loss in either habitat quantity or quality. The department shall act to achieve the mitigation goal for category 3 habitat by requiring avoidance of impacts through alternatives to the proposed development action or mitigation of impacts if unavoidable. If neither of these options can be achieved, the department shall recommend against the proposed development action. The applicant has not addressed the deficiencies that have been highlighted by the department with the proposed minimization and mitigation measures and have not attempted to modify them to better align with department recommendations. The application shall be revised to include and adopt appropriate minimization and mitigation measures that comply with Goal 5. This includes accounting for the impacts and conflicting uses to big game and their habitats that would result from the mine development and associated mining activities. The proposed conditions of approval do not adequately address concerns for displacement or concerns related to habitat loss and the resulting direct and indirect impacts in both the short and long-term life of the project. After the previous application failed, the department had worked with the applicant to address concerns and minimize disturbances, providing comments on a draft mitigation plan. The department was surprised that the applicant did not include any mention of this document and furthermore made the statement during the Planning Commission hearing that they were waiting for ODFW's comments. To be clear, the big game issues that are relevant to this application now are the same issues that were raised by the department in 2021. The department and Lane County staff have invested a considerable amount of time to make a good faith effort in alerting and working with the applicant on these issues, and they continue to ignore those concerns. The Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife recommends that the Board of Commissioners vote to deny the application.
Thank you. Thank you for your public comment. That concludes folks here. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask that you not, please. And we're going to move it to Tanya to manage the online queue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If you are attending today's meeting online and would like to give virtual public comment in opposition, please raise your virtual hand. When I call on your name, you will be unmuted and allowed to give your 2-minute testimony. Chad?
Yes, hello.
Perfect. All right. You may state your name and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thanks. My name's Chad Shelton. I live at 1415 East 31st Avenue in Eugene, Oregon. I'm a skier, a fly fisher, and in general, an outdoor recreationist who's originally from a small community in the southeast, just like Oak Ridge. Where I'm from, I've seen towns embrace their natural spaces and create thriving economies based on conservation and recreation like Oak Ridge is trying to do. I've seen other small communities allow their natural spaces to be chewed up and left with nothing simply for the short-sighted gains of a few already rich men. I've spent the past year working on a personal project in the West Fair and Oak Ridge area, and I've heard nothing but opposition against the old Hazeldale quarry from local business owners and citizens. Believe the people that live there when they say they don't want this. I truly believe that allowing this quarry to be built is short-sighted. It will ultimately leave this town worse off than it was, and Oak Ridge will be left holding the bag. It's my hope you'll deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Jill, go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Hi. Yes.
Go ahead and begin your 2-minute public comment.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board for hearing our testimony today. And I would like to thank those members of the board who clarified the contributions to their various campaigns. I appreciate that. I don't have much to add to the testimony I gave to the other commission, other than, I'm still 78 years old, and I bought my house here 18 years ago. 2 days after I bought it, I lost my entire life savings. To most people, that probably would have been a horrible catastrophe. To me, every single day of my life since, I am grateful for the fact that it happened here in Oak Ridge, because I'm going to cry, because this community is like, and I have lived all over the world, but this community is like no place I have ever been or lived before. You've heard these people. Shout out to you all. I love you. This cannot happen here. We do not deserve it. We are a hardworking, close-knit community who have spent years building, working, and we do not deserve this to happen to us. The children in this community do not deserve to have their health risked for Ed King's profits. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your public comment. Next person is Vanessa. Vanessa, can you unmute?
Yes, hi, Vanessa Tharp, 4991 Hills Creek Road, Oak Ridge, Oregon. I was born and raised here, very proud of that. I want to thank the commissioners for this opportunity, but more so thank all of the community members and experts who are speaking up once again. This has been a tireless effort, nearly 10 years, and I strongly encourage you to deny this application and end this now. If you know anything about Oak Ridge, we've got a lot of other things we need to focus on. We have a high poverty in our town. We are battling wildfires each year. The air quality is so bad, we had to move the senior football night last Friday. Like, we're still dealing with this. The way that Oak Ridge is set up and the air inversions, like, you know, y'all complain when it's bad down in Lane County. We'll come up to Oak Ridge any day. We are dealing on months and months of it and years. And we have such efforts for the economic development going and people working together. You know, we have people going out and cleaning up our forests from those who recreate irresponsibly. We are a community who is very opinionated and do help each other out. And we don't agree on much, but clearly you can see we agree on this. I really just, you know, want to thank so many people, you know, bringing up all the great points. The current recreation and tourism we have, the potential for that, and just also call out kind of the ignorance and avoidance of the applicant without doing any additional research or change. I mean, come on. I just really want you all to just say no, stop this, and let us move on. Please act out of integrity and let the good people of Oak Ridge there and the many more who couldn't be there because of the time of this hearing to make sure that we can move on and focus on the growth and potential that our wonderful community has. So thank you for your time. And again, thank you to everyone who has been able to be there in person or online or has done years and years of work to speak out against this. And let's just end it now.
Thank you for your public comments. Michelle, can you unmute your microphone?
Thank you. My name is Michelle Emmons. I live at 76707 High Prairie Road in the Oak Ridge area. And in the last 5 years, I have pretty much invested every part of my life into this community. I sit on the city's Economic Development Committee. I am the executive director for the Oak Ridge Trails Alliance and work on recreational development across the city and the Middle Fork Ranger District. I am the former president of the Oak Ridge Westford Chamber of Commerce, and I also own a small business here. I'm here today to urge you to not approve the Old Hazeldale Quarry project. There are serious gaps in the proposal that present significant risks to our community's health, safety, and environmental well-being, most of those reasons which you've already heard about. But there's also been a complete lack of research addressing a very critical issue, and that is, where is the water going to come from in order to mitigate the dust and debris that's going to be generated on site? The quarry operations and truck transport require significant water usage, but the proposal time and time again has failed to outline a sustainable source of water. And now, especially in a time when water is scarce and a contested resource, this community is facing increased dust pollution and a strain on our local water supplies as we are dealing with wildfire risks at an all-time high. Goal 5 also lists compatibility with existing uses. In addition to big game habitat, our community's long-term planning and development in East Oak Ridge, including commercial business districts, recreational uses, multimodal transportation routes, and housing, are not compatible with the quarry's location, to say the least for the existing neighborhood character and wells that are tapped into the nearby aquifer. For all these reasons, I am urging you to say no, and I'm also urging you to please consider the principle of your job here. I strongly urge you to deny this proposal because your constituents, the people of Oak Ridge, have spoken, and as our elected officials, isn't it your duty to represent our voices? Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. The next person needs to unmute their microphone is B. Grace. Can you unmute? Oh, there you go. You may begin your public comment.
Chair Trieger, Lane County Board of Commissioners. For the record, my name is Dr. B. Grace Bullock, 3780 Onyx Street. I have been approached by concerned Westford and Oak Ridge residents in my role as the chair of Lane County's Mental Health Substance Use and IDD Advisory Board, the MHAC, to speak to the significant mental health risks posed by the request to rezone forested land on TV Butte for gravel mining. The proposed mine, which would be situated on the city's eastern boundary, presents a considerable public health risk to the community and should not be permitted. The communities of Oak Ridge and Westford have a long history of economic hardship and instability, environmental distress, and limited access to necessary health and mental health services. Even in the absence of the quarry, decades of adversity have led to higher prevalence of mental health and substance use challenges among its youth and adults compared to other regions in Lane County, and have exhausted the resilience and resolve of many residents. Once again, the community is under threat. This time, the Board of County Commissioners has the ability to serve this community rather than contribute to its continued suffering. The quarry and its proximal location to Oak Ridge and Westford presents a considerable threat to the mental health and well-being of Lane County constituents. There is robust research literature linking environmental assaults similar to this one with poor community health. Specifically, 14 daily hours of blasting, vibration, destabilization, air, water, soil, and noise pollution pose significant physical, emotional, and mental stress and distress to youth and adults. In addition, resultant environmental pollutants pose a particular threat to the healthy development of infants, children, and adolescents who are already experiencing the persistent annual assault of wildfire smoke. These developmental threats compound the risk of physical illness, social and emotional disruption, academic problems, and poor long-term thriving, all of which will ultimately place a significant financial and workforce burden on Lane County's already overstretched behavioral health, public health, and education systems. The environmental toll of this quarry would also result in the destruction of salmon spawning and elk calving habitat.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Tanya, are you managing the clock, please? Sorry to our online folks. It's hard because I try to make eye contact and refer to the clock when folks start going over, but I can't see you or Tanya. So thank you, Dr. Bullock.
I will call on the next person. Keith, can you unmute your microphone?
Oh, he is here in Harris Hall, so why don't you go the rest of the way through the queue, and then we'll have Keith come to the podium to do his testimony in person.
Okay. Looks like there's one person online that's calling in via phone and ending in 0403. There you go. Would you like to give testimony in opposition right now? Okay. Then you may begin your 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Sean Malone on behalf of Save TV Butte and Landwatch Lane County. First of all, I'd like to thank the community for showing up. I know it takes time out of their day, especially when the hearing's at 1:30. And it takes courage to get up and say these things to the decision makers. Second thing I'd like to say is that I'm incorporating by reference all of my prior testimony from the Planning Commission. And I'd also encourage anyone else to submit written testimony if the record is left open. If that record is left open, it's up to the discretion of the board. However, we've only heard that 30 days for the initial period. I think it is only fair and equitable if 30 days are given for the first open period, then there should be 30 days for the second open record period, the response period. And the reason for that is if someone has 30 days to prepare studies, expert reports, et cetera, then we should have 30 days to respond to those. My final point is about this sort of disagreement or talk about the continued hearing when there's an ordinance before the board. I was party to the earlier proceedings this morning. The board seemed to, or at least the process was that there was a continued hearing once there was an ordinance before the board. And at the very least, I think it makes sense for the commissioners to be consistent in that that process. Otherwise, there may be procedural defects, but because that's how the board is operating, it makes sense to continue to operate in that manner. And with that, I would hope that the commissioners have heard all this testimony and take it to heart and deny this application because it's deficient on just numerous grounds, again, in which I would direct the commissioners to my written testimony. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I do not see any other virtual hands raised except for Keith that is in Harris Hall. I'll return the meeting back to you.
Thank you, Tanya. Keith, please step to the podium, state your name and mailing address for the record, and your time will begin.
Hi, my name's Keith Robinson. I live at 48329 East 1st Street in our downtown commercial district. I'm a business owner and property owner in Oak Ridge. I just wanted to add one thing with regards to the sightlines westbound on Dunning. One popular commercial shuttle mountain bike operation is Heckletooth Trail, which exits onto Dunning Road, eastbound uphill from the quarry site. And I was clicking around on an app called Strava and just looking at speeds going down Dunning Road. And I frequently saw people going between 40 and 49 miles an hour on a mountain bike down Dunning. Because it's steep and it's curvy and it's fun. It's also popular for road bikes, which would go significantly more. So the applicant's 35 mile per hour study is just absolute nonsense. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. If I could ask you to disengage from your online, and Tanya tells me there's one more person who's raised their hand online, so we'll go back to them for their public comment.
All right, George, can you unmute?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead and begin your public comment.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to, my name's George Bell. I live at 76274 Stehekin Road. That's a spur off of Dunning Road. Just barely over 1,500 feet away, just outside of what they claim is the impact zone, which is ludicrous. But I've made comments before, so I'll keep this brief, but wanted to at least point out, or if it hasn't been pointed out yet again, that this is the exact same proposal that was already went through all this appeal process and was denied. And they've admitted to changing nothing except trying to influence elections, essentially. So this same application was already denied. It should be denied again. And you've been asked to vote to try to help recover from a disaster just directly north of Oak Ridge at Blue River after the wildfire. Now you're being asked to try to prevent a disaster in Oak Ridge. I truly hope that you can do the right thing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your public comments. I'll ask one more time if there's anyone online that would like to give public comment in opposition, please raise your virtual hand. I do not see any other hands raised, so back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tanya. At this time, we will take any additional comments from staff or any information they wish to provide in response to the testimony that we just heard, and then commissioners can ask questions of staff.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this short because it's been such a long meeting, and I'd like to reserve any time for commissioner questions. I know folks have been here a long time. Regarding the public hearing logistics, the Planning Commission recommended denial, and staff followed suit with that recommendation. And believe that it wasn't appropriate to bring an ordinance forward that was inconsistent with, your, appointed planning committee. So that said, if the board decides to approve, we would bring an ordinance forward in a continued public hearing, such that there would only be one public hearing. That is an option. We would not be reading in an ordinance outside of a public hearing. So I just want to clarify that. I can certainly address, questions about the Salt Creek Willamette Highway corridor, but I don't know. Perhaps I'll do that with commissioner questions just to make sure we're on track and, addressing questions as they are best prioritized by the board. So, thank you.
Thank you. So in that case, so I want to give an opportunity, rather than you addressing maybe any or all things you heard, you want to see what questions commissioners have, and then if there's anything that was brought up during testimony that commissioners didn't ask about that you want to provide clarification on, you can do that. Okay, thank you. Then commissioners, questions for staff. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Couple questions. I would like to come back to the Salt Creek question that I had earlier. But we heard a lot regarding the distance of the impact zone. How did and why is that 1,500 considered the impact zone and not wider?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Commissioner. So the 1,500 feet comes directly from the rule, the Oregon Administrative Rule, and that is the default impact area that's to be established, short of, I believe it's worded, short of factual information indicating an increase in that area. And so, yeah, the applicants relied on that default language. We have heard testimony and we've received evidence that the impact area should be increased, but it would be up to nailing down exactly what evidence is being relied upon to increase that impact area.
Do you have any recommendation of what that increased area should be?
It to some degree depends on what conflicts are identified. We have indicated some evidence submitted with regard to the Goal 5 major big game habitat. I forget the exact number. It was in excess of 2,000 or 2,500 feet due to elk habitat, and that was submitted, I believe, by a habitat biologist, John Goodall. There have, of course, been a lot of other pieces of testimony submitted that would indicate conflicts may exist outside of that. I think the key here is nailing down, what factual evidence exists, and so yeah, I think for now the agenda cover memo limits the evidence to what was recommended for the big game impacts. However, that could be expanded if the board points to, other evidence in the record.
Okay, thank you. And I would support that increase in the impact zone as well. But I'll have to see if I have support from the rest of the board members. Can we go back to the Salt Creek corridor question that came up earlier? And you had mentioned that the applicant did not address that, but then the applicant's attorney did mention in his testimony what the mitigation efforts were. Can you confirm what your idea and understanding is of that for us?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So staff did address this in the agenda cover memo, and to some degree, unfortunately, there's a little bit of speculation here because I'm not aware that this has been addressed in the past. But we do believe the policy language is clear that that the Salt Creek Willamette Highway is a significant open space resource that's acknowledged within the Rural Comprehensive Plan. The ACM notes that we were soliciting a substantive response from the applicant, and we staff did so early on in the Planning Commission process. No response was received except an argument, against that interpretation. The applicant argued that no, the Rural Comprehensive Plan does not consider that to be a significant open space resource. So staff, the language does appear to support the fact that the rural resource zone may be the mechanism to, minimize any conflicts. And we did mention that in the ACM. I don't know what that would look like. And part of the problem is that it's really incumbent upon the applicant to, identify conflicts and propose those minimization measures. So I think that is probably moving in the right direction regarding implementation of the rural resource zone to minimize conflicts, but I don't know what findings would be necessary at that point.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And I did want to at least say also thank you to everybody that testified. I know that it can be intimidating and it can be scary because this is can be quite emotional and it impacts people's lives. I heard you and appreciate your time and energy today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions from commissioners for staff? Response to testimony. Commissioner Farr.
Thanks. Commissioner Buck got to the nature of the only question I really had, and that was the genesis of the 1,500 feet. And you said that is in OAR, is that right?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay. Is that standard? How often does that get changed?
I don't know how often a 1,500-foot impact area is expanded. The rule it clearly allows for the impact area to be expanded if there is factual information that that would indicate that it needs to be expanded. Perhaps it would be helpful if I read the.
No need. We're really short on time here. Really short on time.
Yeah.
So you don't need to read that in right now. But you say you don't know, and you also said that we need to nail down the facts regarding a reason to extend the impact zone. So research as to what facts, why and how, and where the facts. And there's some pretty compelling testimony about sound from Greenwater Park, 2 miles away, I believe you said, 4 miles away. Excuse me. I hope it was good sound. Okay, but that being said, clearly we have more information to gather regarding the impact zone and regarding whether or not the Salt Creek Rural Scenic Open Space Resource, is that the correct designation, is satisfactory to meet the impact standards that we're looking at. So I think we have a lot more questions. I'm really compelled by some of the testimony I heard today. Thanks for being here. Mr. and Mrs. Pokorny, thanks for your historical perspective. I'm trying to envision what it was like back in the days, Mr. Pokorny, when you were talking about taking lead batteries to the dump. But anyway, you and I can talk about that some other time. So I'm inclined to believe we do need to hear more testimony in order for the board to correctly, adequately process this information. It's been going on for quite some time, and I am not unopposed to extending the record by 30 days, and even as Mr. Malone stated, 30 days beyond that to get further response from anyone who may have rebuttal testimony, should we say, to whatever testimony is provided in the 30 days. So as we move forward, Chair, I'm inclined to say, yes, let's go with an additional 30 days, keep the record open for 30 more days. Thank you.
Commissioner Senegan.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Great. And thanks, everybody. So just looking through this, it's 46 acres out of 107. 107 is the total parcel. To Commissioner Farr's point, looking at what if the impact zone was changed or something, like what would that acreage look like? Because we were looking at, how much aggregate, 16.9 million tons, I think is a number that I saw in there. Just what all these impacts look like, and start working through these, see where we're at.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I can't believe I'm so impressed with all you folks coming out here and your heartfelt responses. I heard every word, and you've got me thinking. So I'm going to tell you, you've got me thinking. I said the thing that I think got me thinking the most was, how do we know that we can ensure the water quality and the dump not leaching into somewhere else once something's disturbed? I'm thinking of just downtown Eugene. When I was a kid, I dumped batteries in Alton Baker Park from a 51 Chevy pickup from my dad's pickup. And here we are with the comparison to Skinner's Butte being next to a dump. That just kind of went right back in my head, and that's a very big concern. Who's the expert that decides whether that can be mitigated? That's my big major question. I mean, all the other identifiers aside, big game, et cetera, that's the one that really stood out for me, because if we're talking about water quality in a community and the possibility of that disturbing, who's going to sign off on that to say, oh yeah, this will take care of that? That's a big ask. So I am totally in support of getting another 30 days and another 30 days for a response. And I apologize to the people that have been dealing with this for 9 years. This is only my second year on the staff of Board of Commissioners dealing with this, so I've got to get up to speed. And I would think that another 60 days to wrap this up on some of the things. And that's just one of the things I have questions on. So the other thing I have a question on is this. If we're talking about liability, and Mr. Clevenger, Council Clevenger said that, the possibility of a suit with Lane County's in the air, 16.9 million tons of aggregates worth about $750 million when you scrap it up. I mean, I'm kind of a numbers guy, so forgive me for working through this. So in my estimation, I think the best play here and might be to bring the city of Oak Ridge and its citizens together and the county council to figure out a way that we could, the city of Oak Ridge could possibly make an offer to the site, to Mr. King, Crown Properties. I mean, I'm in real estate. Sometimes the best ideas are the ones you don't think of, and perhaps there might be a deal there that could satisfy both parties. I'm not saying you're going to pay him $750 million, but I think there's a number out there that, then we could lock up the liability. We wouldn't have to, have this behemoth under the ground and the worry on that. I mean, there's a lot of options here in my mind, my creative way of thinking about this, that I think it could be approached. So I'm totally in support of the extra 30 days, and in due time, that's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think I'm just going to restate, as I said earlier, my understanding is that even some of the conflicts that have mitigation plans, those plans may not be sufficient, particularly for how to ensure compliance or what to do in a case of non-compliance and the damage has been done. So that was one of the main concerns raised by the Planning Commission, and it's mine as well. Specifically, also the noise concerns. There's no clear, objective, enforceable process for addressing that. And then, of course, here we are with the big game conflicts, which have not been minimized and apparently just not even perceived as something that needs addressing. So I have concerns from the jump that for whatever reason, an incomplete application was submitted. It didn't start off on the best foot. I am very curious, this push by the applicant's attorney to leave the record open, is that required to address the questions and concerns that the board has raised that we want a little more information about? It doesn't require leaving the record open, is that right? That just
There's no requirement that you leave it open.
And
There's no legal requirement that you leave the record open if it's requested.
Sure. My question is, because we don't have an ordinance or an order before us, we could continue to have conversations about the record as it exists. We could close the record, and we have clearly we've already raised lots of questions based on the record as it exists. Leaving it open just allows for more information to further create more questions or more clarity, depending.
You can do either.
Right.
You can
So-
close it and have conversation, or you can leave the record.
This is my point. So a lot of the things that have been raised could still be, we can still have staff engagement with this board to help us wrestle and deliberate with a closed record. Thank you. At this time, we allow some time for the applicant to provide a final rebuttal if they so choose, which would conclude public testimony. Does the applicant representative wish to provide closing rebuttal?
I want to be so brief because everybody's worn out. I just wanted, I would like to request leaving the record open. How long is also in the discretion of the board. With respect to the Salt Creek scenic area, I think that does need to be addressed. The applicant did address that in writing to the Planning Commission, as best I can recall. Our theory at the time was that it was not a significant Goal 5 resource because based on the LCDC's acknowledgement of the plan, that agency said there is no list of scenic resources, and the rule for processing mining applications says in order to be a Goal 5 resource that is considered for conflicts, it has to be on a list, and it's not on a list. And that's a legal question. All that notwithstanding, I think that it can be assumed to be a Goal 5 resource, and it can be mitigated just fine based on the language of the policy of the plan. I'm going to be quiet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I conclude public testimony, I just want to offer my deep appreciation not only to folks for coming to speak things that are difficult to say, the stress that you've been under, but for taking the time to travel and be here in person. Thank you also to those who participated online. We value you as well, but it is an extra step for those of you that came in person, and we very much appreciate it. And I think it's important that we see you eye to eye, literally, and also we see you. So thank you for being here. With that, I will conclude the public testimony portion, and we will move into any deliberations that we wish to have today. The board will need to adopt findings in support of an ordinance for approval or an order for denial. At this point, I will open up the opportunity for the board to discuss whether to tentatively approve or deny the application based on the current record. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I have deep concerns from the material presented from the Planning Commission and from testimony. I really have a problem with the argument of keeping the record open in order to address big game when there's been substantial time to address that already. My additional concern with that is giving the time so that the applicant can give us their own findings or a potential motion to approve rather than the board coming up with, and the staff coming up with findings of their own. I find that unfair. And it's an unnecessary step, additional step. So I would not support a motion to continue to extend the timeline. I take to heart the letter from ODF and W regarding deer, elk, big game. I don't think that since there's been such a substantial time and multiple applications that this could not have otherwise been addressed. If it was going to be addressed by now, it would have been. And it's simply not. That's highly problematic. The scenic resources is a new issue that I don't know a lot about, but I would like some time with staff to address that more. I don't necessarily think that that requires additional 30 days for keeping the record open. That's just correspondence back and forth between us and staff in a future meeting. I want to thank the Planning Commission because they're all volunteers and these are really meaty issues. And they meet to have public testimony as well and gather that information and do all the due diligence and deliberation to give us recommendations. And this was probably one of their more substantial items on their agenda recently. I trust what they have to say, and at this point, I would support denying the application and to find draft findings to support that order by staff, but we'll have to see from the rest of the board. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. You know, like Commissioner Buck, I have deep concerns myself, and my concerns were magnified today by hearing testimony from the people who actually live in Oak Ridge and some people who don't live in Oak Ridge who spend time in Oak Ridge. I need to hear a little bit more. I think 9 years ago we had a public hearing in Oak Ridge. How many were there at that? 9 years ago I was. And somebody suggested, bring it to our community so we can speak. I don't know, maybe that's something that we need to do, is to bring it back to your community so that you can show us and tell us a little bit more in detail. But I believe that I need to hear more information. I believe that keeping the record open for 30 days will give us a chance to receive some of the information that's not on the table at this time, and in order for me to potentially ask some more questions that I didn't have before today's testimony. And I appreciate today's testimony. So my motion would be to keep the record open for 30 days, plus 30 days, as suggested by Mr. Malone in public testimony today, in order to provide an opportunity for a response to any further information that's placed on the record by the applicant.
Ready for a motion?
No, I just wanted to make sure no other comments from the board. Yeah, I'm also not in support of keeping the record open because I understand we can get the questions that we still have and more information from staff with a closed record. Additionally, depending on any action that might happen if an ordinance were to come, we would still be able to, again, have a hearing on the ordinance. That is not the same thing as keeping the record open, which, as Commissioner Buck pointed out, predominantly serves to allow for findings language to be presented that the board can then use, is my understanding of the primary goal of that strategy. So I'm not in support. I think we have plenty before us. It's also my understanding that a record can be reopened.
Yes.
So another reason I don't see any compelling reason to hold the record open from today, but we've only heard from 3 commissioners, so I don't have a sense that's where we're going. Commissioner Senega.
Well, I don't have to explain to everybody how big of a decision this is. And I also feel terrible for how you guys have been going through this. You know, one thing we do have to look at, I mean, it is our responsibility, this is a huge resource. So we need to make sure that we have taken the time and done all our due diligence before we say yes or no on, 16.9 million tons of quarry rock. It's been stated, it's of significance. We know what it takes for these trucks to go up and down the road. Nobody can deny that. 105,000 pounds these truck and trailers weigh. they are going from somewhere, if they're coming from Springfield to Oak Ridge or Oak Ridge to Springfield, this is a lot. Sorry. You know, these are big decisions. So thank you for your time. I once again appreciate everybody coming out, and I've got a list of questions here that I would like to mull over before I make that decision. I mean, there were some very, very great points made today. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've made my intentions known already. Like I said, I support Commissioner Senega's response that this is a huge decision. Like I said, we're only in this 2 years. Got a lot of questions still to ask, and the 30 or 60 days, in my mind, I apologize, is the right thing to do. I understand that your torturous experience is another 60 days seems like forever, but I think it's the right thing to do. Like Commissioner Senega said as well, this is a huge resource, and if we decide not to undertake this resource, then to build roads and that kind of thing, we're going to have to think about something else. But also, in comparison, on the other end of my weighted barbell is the fact that still I've got some really serious environmental questions that I need answered, and I need some experts to tell me if they can actually answer those questions. So that's really where my feeling is on this. So I would definitely support an alteration to the supplied motion number 3 and would move on from there. That would be my recommendation.
So did you have something, Ann, or you just, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, please.
shall I just, I mean, I think that, you know, chronologically, we'll just deal with the record issue first. And then once we know that, we can figure out where we are.
So, and is that something we do through formal motion, or are you wanting board direction? Okay.
Yeah, and I can help, I mean, I can either help draft it or I can say it and you can say what she said.
Say so
because
moved.
I want to make sure that we get the open record period articulated the right way.
Thank you. And again, just, with Commissioner's permission, we'll have council propose motion language and see if there's a commissioner that wants to do a so moved. Does that work procedurally? Regarding specifically keeping the record open only.
Yeah.
Let's do can we figure out if we have a 3-2 vote on leaving the record open, and then I'll give you the language.
See, a little sort of straw poll.
Yeah.
Folks are, looks like there are, Commissioner Farr?
Just to say why I opt to keep the record open. We received some more information today, more that I would like to hear, have substantially more information on. Closing the record, I worry about introducing new information that wasn't provided on the record. So in order to keep the information as fresh as possible on the record, I think we need to have the 30 days in order to do that. So that's why I'm in support of the 30 days.
So clarifying question, anything introduced today is now part of the record. So if the record closes today, anything that came up today is part of the record and can be discussed in a closed record.
Yes.
Thank you.
You missed my point. So.
Do you want me to just articulate
It looks like
an open
that is
record?
being agreed to, yeah.
What the open record would be if you left the record open. Okay. Okay, so what I've heard, and I think that both the applicant and I know Sean Malone doesn't speak for all of the neighbors, but he was the one, he knows the process, and he'd said 30 days. So I know that there are other people in the audience who would probably disagree with the extra 30 days, but I'm just going to go with that, and then you guys can decide whether that's what you want to do. So what I heard the applicant request was that there be an open record period, and what we do is we call this the first open record period for 30 days from today. I have my calendar out, but if someone can help me.
November
14th? Okay, so November 14th would be the end of the first open record period. The first open record period would be a time for any party, including staff, to submit new evidence on any issue that is relevant to the application and argument by any party. So 4 o'clock, right? 4 o'clock on November 14th. All of that new evidence and argument needs to be submitted by anyone who wishes to submit something. So then 30 more days.
16th.
Is December 16th at 4 o'clock. Is an opportunity for anyone to respond to the evidence and argument that was submitted on the 14th of November. So your responses have to be in response to something that somebody else submitted on the 14th. You can provide new evidence if that evidence is in response to other evidence that was provided on the 14th, not prior. And then I think just 7 days. 7 more days, which is December 23rd. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that a weekend?
That's a Monday.
Okay. For final rebuttal, which is applicant only, no new evidence, no opportunity for anyone other than the applicant or the applicant's representative. That's it.
Would anyone like to so move the motion and timeline as proposed by County Council?
I would like to make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Commissioner Farr and seconded by the Vice Chair to adopt the motion as read by County Council. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. My discussion was I was expecting a tail end to that motion as it would be directed by staff to be brought back by a certain meeting date. Is that not part of the motion? Or were you just discussing that?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. We could select a date and time certain, but based on, we're really uncertain about the amount of evidence and testimony we might receive and what's going to be contained therein. So I think it might be best to just continue and renotice the hearing. It would be the same hearing, but we would just renotice it for a date to be determined. We would be happy to take input from the board about when we would return as soon as we possibly could.
One more thing. I understand that that's kind of like when you go in to buy a used car and the used car salesman gets a little deal at the end. It kind of spins you for a loop. And my understanding that the reason I was supporting this was it was going to be a 60-day process. And what I'm hearing you say, that's not going to be a 60-day process. We're going to be meeting about this after the first of the year. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
So this could be a 90-day process in total or more.
So the open record period is being established as a 67-day process. However, there would be, analysis that goes into that. There would be the renoticing if we don't choose a date and time certain. There would be preparation of an agenda cover memo. There would be a lot to do before bringing it back to the board. We wouldn't be able to immediately bring it back.
Okay, thank you.
And in follow-up to that, depending what is presented in an open record, I mean, it could go well beyond the open record period and whatever time it takes staff to bring that back to us, because that could bring questions anew, just like folks are saying they have today and are wanting the record to stay open.
I imagine there will be some open questions that staff would have to research, and including legal questions, so.
Just putting it out there, this was the first option. It doesn't need to be the option that you end with. There's certainly shorter timeframes that we could look at.
Yeah, can you say more about that?
Well, the applicant requested 30 days. That is, in the grand scheme, that's a long time for a record to be left open. Granted, it was probably to allow time to talk to experts and hire experts and have them do certain things, but 30 days is a long time. So it could be 20 and 20 or 20 and 15 or any universe of options. Just because he requested 30 doesn't mean that you need to give 30, is what I'm saying.
This is my motion. So questions regarding the altered timeframe on that. I'm trying to bring it inside of 2024 in terms of getting a certain encapsulation, understanding that it takes staff time to compile whatever responses need to be compiled based on that. But if we went to 20 and 15 was one that you suggested. Pencil that out for me.
Yeah, that's.
And I will just point out December 10th is our last up day, or the 17th? 17th is our last up day of the year.
That brings it well inside of that.
On November 25th, that would put us at the, if I have it calculated correctly, the record would close after final rebuttal on November 25th
second
with 2015-7.
Then with the seconds concurrence, I would change the length of that to 20 and 15 as opposed to 30 and 30. Is that clear to you, Ms. Davies?
I'm going to
Councilor Davis?
calculate it again, make sure that's right. 2015-7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 26th. You have November 26th. I have now, November 26th is what I came up this time.
Commissioner Buck?
If it's changed, I don't understand why both parties don't get the same amount of time. I think that's fundamentally unfair.
It's both sides, well, both sides are submitting whatever they want in the first, it's not really just applicant and respondent, it's both sides. And so the reason that the second sometimes is not as long is that you're supposed to get all of your evidence in the first, whatever expert testimony or evidence that you want to put in, you should be putting it in. I mean, this doesn't always happen. There's ways to play the system, but putting it in at the first opportunity. And then the only thing that you're allowed to do in the second opportunity is respond to what the other side did. So oftentimes that second period is not as long as the first.
But it's all parties both times.
Yes.
Sorry, Commissioner, to interrupt, but yeah, does that answer your question?
I understand that, but in this particular case, the other party is waiting for the first party's submittal, and they can't do anything or respond until that's submitted, and they don't get the same amount of time.
Well, 2020 and 7 is probably, the first week of December. So December 2nd, around there. If you push it beyond Thanksgiving.
That's fine. We're down the week before Thanksgiving anyway, so the 2020 is fine with the maker of the motion, if it's okay with the seconder of the motion.
Okay, let me figure this out, though, because I was fudging a little bit. 47. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it does. It's December 2nd. It's 2020 and 7. The final rebuttal actually lands on a weekend, so he gets to the next Monday, which is December 2nd. And does that allow us to squeeze in a?
Who seconded my motion?
That's close as.
We're earlier in January.
We're earlier in January, so January 14th or the 28th would be an option.
So December 2nd, then January 15th as a potential option for coming back to, for,
I think he said 14th or 28th of January to be coming back if the record ultimately closed on December 2nd, which would give staff enough time to do what they need to do.
well, I will stand with that motion, presuming it's all right with the seconder of the motion.
I'll second that motion.
Do you want to just read those dates to me so I have, so it's a first open record period to 4 p.m. on,
Excuse me while I count.
sure.
Chair, could somebody, once we got everything done, state the entire motion? Thank you.
4th. Cool. It's good to double check.
25th.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so November 4th for the first open record period, November 25th for the response period, and December 2nd is 7 days from that.
The date
so
will be
the first
determined
open
in
record.
January.
Yes. Yep.
First open record period to November 4th, 4 p.m. Any party can submit new evidence and arguments on any issue. Response to that evidence or arguments only from the first open record due by November 25, 4 p.m., with final rebuttal from the applicant only due December 2nd, with staff then bringing back the item as soon in January as possible thereafter. Is the motion on, is that, Commissioner Farr, is that
Yeah.
satisfy, Vice Chair?
Thank you.
Any other discussion to that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Nay. Motion carries 3-2 with Commissioners Buck and Trieger in opposition.
Chair, I have a question for council.
Yeah, Commissioner Farr.
Regarding the period that we've just established, if I were to want to go to Oak Ridge and talk to Alyssa Mayer, for instance, or talk to Mr. or Mrs. Picorni, am I precluded from doing that?
Yeah.
So we don't need to do any of the deliberations or potential motions because the record was left open and we're going to keep going for a while more before we get to any deliberations.
That would be recommended at this point.
All right. Well, then, I think then that concludes the item, unless I'm missing something. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for your forbearance. We have just a little bit more business, and I was communicating with Vice Chair and our administrator. We are going to move commissioner business and announcements and whatnot till tomorrow after our morning items. Thank you, everyone, again for coming, and thank you for being quiet as you leave the room so we can complete. I'm sorry, can you give that to staff, please, and then they'll make sure that we get it, just so it is part of the record and it comes to us through the record. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ann.
So we do have just, if I could ask folks in the room, we have one more small item of business that we need to attend to on another matter. Thank you so much. You're welcome to be out in the hallway and chat. Thank you. We do have one more Public Works item. This is a first reading and setting a second reading and public hearing on ordinance number PA 1393 in the matter of amending the Lane County Rural Comprehensive Plan and adopting the Blue River Complete Community Plan as a special purpose plan of the Lane County Rural Comprehensive Plan and adopting a savings and severability clause, and ordinance number 24-08 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 16 to implement the Blue River Complete Community Plan by adding the community residential zone, Community Flex Use Zone, and Blue River Drive Overlay Zone, amending the Park and Recreation Zone, and adopting a Savings and Severability Clause, file number 509 PA2305693. Lindsay Eichner is with us today, along with Taylor Stillin again, to give us a quick overview. This shouldn't take long. Thank you.
I'm the packet before you. We're looking at bringing a complete community plan for the community of Blue River with some new zoning codes and amendments to the Rural Comprehensive Plan. We'll be prepared to provide the board a complete overview of the project and the background at the public hearing so that the public and the board can all hear that presentation. So we would request approving the reading and setting the second reading public hearing for 1:30 on October 29th, 2024.
Questions?
So moved.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Buck. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Buck, seconded by the Vice Chair to approve the first reading and set the second reading and public hearing on ordinance number PA 1393 and ordinance number 24-08. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none. These are ordinances or no, we're just setting the, Mr. Mokryski, do we don't, We're not adopting the ordinances, we're just, okay, thank you, it's been a long day, thank you, just making sure. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. As was discussed earlier, we have moved item 10A, our quarterly holiday farm fire recovery update, to next Tuesday, the 22nd, and we will move items 11A and B and items 12 and 13 to tomorrow. We do have a meeting at 9 a.m. in the Board of County Commissioners Conference Room in hybrid format, and so at the sound of my gavel, we will be adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Lori? Good job, Taylor.
You what? I'm sorry? Oh, no. I broke a tooth in Paris.
That's there.
It's at 7:30.
Great, but if